between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and I'm excited to be here with you today as we have plenty to talk about to start off your Turkey Day week. Happy early Thanksgiving to all my wonderful, beautiful people out there. I hope you are going to be somewhere safe, sound, and warm for Thanksgiving, and if you are not, I pray that God finds you a home very soon. And to everybody, I hope you have enough food on your table, enough love in your heart, and enough warmth, as I said before, to enjoy such a beautiful day of remembrance, to be thankful. And I hope that you take the thankful spirit and you use it 365 days of the year and not just on one. So, with that being said, this week's going to be a little bit different because your boy's going to take some time off to be with the family. So, Thanksgiving, we will be off. Black Friday, we will also be off. So, I'm very excited to spend these 3 days condensing. We're going to condense 5 shows into 3 days. That's what we're going to do. So you'll still get the ingredients to success. You'll still get the annoying moment of the week. You'll still get lead, and you'll still get the top dog of the week. All this week, you'll get fantasy football. It's all going to come to you. We're just going to have a shortened week because you're going to be with your family, and I'm going to be with mine. So excited to talk with you and excited to share in that time period. And then next week, there's going to be a slew, just a giant, just awesome specials coming to you next week. So make sure that you're ready to watch them. We're going to have that first week of December, that first full week of December, Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora coming to you with some really awesome stuff. Can't wait to share all those specials with you. Proudly presented by our incredible team here at Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Of course, Brooklyn Pickle down in North Kakalaki. You'll find them on 1788 Old Morganton Road in North Carolina, and Southern Pines, North Carolina, right by Pinehurst Golf Course. So make sure you check them out when you go down there, or if you're already down there, check out Pinehurst Golf Courses. Thank you so much for your support, for going down and joining us at Brooklyn Pickle down in Southern Pines. Appreciate that. Carvel DeWitt, the Wildcat Sports Pub, Servomation, Mother's Cupboard, Canine Camp Dog Daycare, GG Cards and Breaks, Avicoli's, Mon Paz, the snack capital of the world, as well as Canine Campground Dog Boarding, Pizza Man, Fire Pit Barbecue and Saloon, Great Lakes Honda City, Chick-fil-A Cicero, Bryan's Landing, and we are the exclusive multimedia marketing partner of your Lemoyne College Dolphins, your Bryan and Stratton Colleges, Syracuse Bobcats, and of course your Binghamton University Bearcats. So thank you for tuning in and supporting the wonderful companies that we are blessed to work with. And of course, you could find us where you are right now around the country and the world on youtube.com, facebook.com, both /wakeupcalldt, and on wakeupcalldt.podbean.com. So like I said, this is our jump off to Thanksgiving week. So happy early Turkey Day to all my wonderful people out there. I hope you're having a beautiful start to your week. If you're having a rough one, we're going to help make it better. If you're having a good one, we're going to keep the ball rolling in that direction. So, as you know, Mondays are Murph time. So Murph is with me here on Monday, and we are celebrating Thanksgiving with you. We'll be talking about college football in Week 13. What was I right about? What was I wrong about? We'll address all that good stuff. College football playoff, who I think should be in. And we'll also be talking about the NFL in Week 12. And that clearing in my throat, for those of you on radio, I was pointing to something. It wasn't just me obnoxiously clearing my throat. So with that being said, Murph, welcome to the broadcast.
It's a happy Monday, my friend. It was, boy, was that a crazy weekend.
Yeah. It was pretty incredible. The shakeup in college football, the shakeup in the NFL.
That is an understatement.
Yeah, the teams that have won, the teams that lost. So I'd like to address something here. And I'm going to go ahead and address it early because, as people know, when I'm right, we'll talk about it. And when I'm wrong, we'll talk about it. Because unlike other people out there, I can address when I'm wrong because you're not always going to be right. Now, Notre Dame is a team that I thought has, outside of defeating Texas A&M in their first week, has done almost nothing to be a top 6 team. Not saying that they couldn't be sniffing the top 15, but definitely not sniffing the top 5 based on who they beat. and who they lost to, which was Northern Illinois. Now, Notre Dame this past week, and we go back and look at Notre Dame's schedule, they're one of the only independents still out there. Keep in mind, UMass is independent, but they won't be after this season. So it'll just be UConn and Notre Dame as of right now. Notre Dame this season defeated Texas A&M when they were ranked 20th, lost at home to Northern Illinois, and paid them $1.4 million in that loss. Fun. Then they defeated an unranked Purdue on the road, Miami of Ohio, unranked. They beat Louisville when Louisville was ranked, and obviously Louisville has kind of shown that they're all over the place this season. They defeated them 31-24 at home. They beat Stanford unranked at home, Georgia Tech unranked at home, Navy, who was ranked 24th at the time, they blew them out at home. They beat Florida State, who's been awful this year, at home. And, well, they played a lot of home games this year. They played Virginia at home, beat them. That's the other part of this, too. I don't know. How many road games did Notre Dame play this year? 1, 2, 2. 2 road games. Must be nice. They're already a Big Ten team. So, and then
It's the NBC factor.
Yeah, and so they beat Army in Yankee Stadium this past week, and then they'll play unranked USC. So their schedule still looks blah to me. If they were going to be in and they're in the college football playoff, I'd put them at between 10, 11, and 12. But seeing the game that they played against Army has had a really good season. They had an undefeated season. They were 9-0 going into it. Notre Dame won 49-14 in this game. And we look back on the game, they scored 2 touchdowns in the first quarter, 2 in the second quarter, 2 in the third quarter, and then they had 1 in the fourth quarter. And they commanded this game all the way through. They led by as much as 42 points with 10:40 left to go in the game, 49-7. So Army, sadly, I mean, they're going to play for a championship. They will play for a championship. And, you know, in the AAC. So no matter what, they have the opportunity to hoist a trophy this season, and I'm really happy for the Black Knights with that. Unfortunately, they're not going to get treated like Notre Dame. They're not going to get treated like Ohio State. And so we're in a position right now where they're going to play for an AAC championship, but being 9-1 is not going to matter to the committee, probably, because the committee doesn't really give a lot of fairness to the military academies, nor do they give it to the American Athletic. So I'm going to address 2 points. One, if Army lost this game and they were in the Big Ten, they would be protected. They'd be 9-1. They'd still be in the top 14, and they'd still have a shot. Because they lost this game to Notre Dame, the sad part of this is it's not going to be a quality loss for Army. Now, if Notre Dame lost this game, it would have been a quality loss for Notre Dame. It's not going to be a quality loss for Army. It's going to push Notre Dame higher. It's either going to keep them in 6 or move them to 5, but it's going to actually help Notre Dame that they beat Army, but it wouldn't have helped Army as much if they beat Notre Dame, because there's no way that they were going to jump them from almost 20 all the way up to the top 5, top 6. So they might have not even have put them in the top 10, because you see what they've done to SMU. So Notre Dame, I was wrong. You took care of Army. You barreled over them. Congratulations. So that's where I was wrong. Where I'm right is that this win is going to be a feather in Notre Dame's cap, but it wouldn't have been treated the same for Army. It wouldn't have been a big enough feather. And that frustrates me. I think a 9-1 team, as there's now only Oregon's undefeated, and
that's it.
That's it, because Indiana lost. So there's one
Indiana got their doors blown off.
Right. So there's one undefeated team, and Indiana's going to be protected because it's a Big Ten team. So, and that's what I'm talking about here. When the college football playoff rankings came out, they said last week, if Indiana lost to Ohio State, and I want to make sure that I read this right because it was on the screen, but if Indiana lost to Ohio State, they had a 96% chance of making it if they lost. So to me, there's a sickness to that, because you look at Indiana and you say, okay, they got one loss, and they, like you said, they got their doors blown off. Army got their doors blown off and they have one loss, and we're going to talk about how great Indiana is, and then they're going to keep Army at bay. So this is where I'm saying there is this, regardless of where you stand and who you like, to take an impartial step. And that's what I take. It's not I hate the Big Ten. I've never hated the Big Ten. I respect the Big Ten when they win. Nobody wants to talk to me about Michigan this year because they stink. But I've told you when Michigan's going to play a good team, I want to see what Michigan looks like when they play good competition. Well, they played good competition this year, and they have been atrocious. So I don't want to
Well,
say
they did last year too, and they won a national championship.
last year they got investigated multiple times, and their coach was suspended. So, I mean, if you can win a championship doing that, Syracuse's probably would have been taken away. But Michigan, okay, they won last year. They got an unfair treatment the year before, an unfair treatment the year before, an unfair treatment the year before, an unfair treatment this year. I believe they were in the top 5 this year, top 9 this year, and now
something like that. Now they're terrible.
Right, they suck. So, but nobody wants to talk about it because they suck this year. No one wants to talk about the unfair advantage of they had to lose 3 games just to get kicked out of the top 25. They had to lose 3 games because they didn't want to take them out of the AP, and they didn't want to take them out of the coaches poll. Army had to fight tooth and nail to even get to 25 being undefeated. So, as one of the few, there was 5 or 6, or probably 5 at the time. So, looking at this, all I'm saying is, if you take an impartial view at this, Big Ten fans, and Michigan and Ohio State and Army, all that, if we take an impartial view of this, Indiana was told before the game, you're going to be fine no matter what you do. Probably. Army, you better win and pray to God. That's the unfair advantage. I give credit to Notre Dame for winning. I still think Army is a good team. I still think Army deserves a shot. And if you're going to almost guarantee Indiana, who has played almost 0 competitive teams and games until last week, they played Ohio State and Illinois. Illinois, but they played Ohio State and they lost. Okay? Army played Notre Dame and they lost. There's no difference between a schedule, and if you want to call Army a schedule, there's no difference between Indiana and Army except for the fact that Indiana's in the Big Ten. And that is where I want people to be honest with themselves. Credit to Notre Dame, but let's be real. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. Army's been thrown to the wolves, and Indiana's given protection for sucking this week. That doesn't make sense.
Well, I mean, if you want to make that argument, Army sucked too.
I mean,
they
said that. But there's one protected suck and there's one unprotected suck. That's what I'm saying. There's you played bad, you're protected. You played bad, you're not protected. That's the argument I'm making. Army has no protection. Indiana was told, win, lose, or draw, we're probably going to have your back.
Fair. But the teams that you're playing in your conference, no unranked team, like 2 unranked teams are not equal, right? So
depends on who they are.
Running off Indiana's schedule, FIU, Western Illinois, okay, those are your non-conference games. UCLA, Charlotte, also another non-conference. Then you get Maryland, Northwestern, Nebraska, Washington, Michigan State, Michigan, Ohio State, and Purdue. Is that a tough schedule? No, not particularly. But the teams in the Big Ten that are not ranked, I would say are better than the teams in the American that are not ranked. Because if you look at Army's schedule, they played Lehigh, they played FAU, they played Rice. Then they get into the American. They play Temple, they play Tulsa, they play UAB, they play East Carolina, Air Force, North Texas. Then they played Notre Dame, UTSA, and then Navy, obviously in the Army-Navy game. I would, if you were to pin the teams, those unranked teams of the Big Ten that Indiana played versus those unranked teams in the American that Army played, 10 times out of 10, you're taking the teams in the Big Ten. Maybe not every single, methodical game because, that one team at the bottom of the Big Ten like Rutgers, maybe they lose to UTSA. Right? Rutgers isn't exactly a great program. Decent year for them this year, but they've been near the bottom of the barrel pretty much since the American was formed and they went to the Big Ten, and obviously the Big East was gone. So if you look at it this way, Indiana was ranked as high as they did because the teams in their conference at the bottom that they have to play are significantly better than the teams in the bottom of the American. And that's not even a question. Do I think Army should have been ranked 20th? No. I think Army should have been closer to the top 15. Indiana was ranked as high as they were because they played, yes, unranked schools in the Big Ten, but Washington's still a decent team. Even though they're having a bad year, Michigan is still no slouch because I believe did they have to go to the Big House or did they play them at home? No, they played them at home. They had to go to Michigan State. Northwestern is usually a tough place to play, and then he had to go to the Horseshoe. That's not easy. But before the year, if I would have told you Indiana's schedule, you would have been like, okay, Washington, tough game. Michigan State, reasonably tough game. Michigan, very tough game. Ohio State, very tough game. You look at all these teams that they're playing, you would have thought before the year, like, this is not exactly an easy schedule. Michigan just wasn't good this year. It's plain and simple. They basically turned into the 2020 LSU team. The year after they won the national championship, go undefeated, lose all these guys, and now they stink. Well, maybe not stink, but comparatively. But if Michigan played anybody in the American, I think they smack them, including Army.
Not the case.
I vehemently disagree, but
anybody
that's besides the point.
I mean, I would love to play, if I'm the American, I'd love to play Maryland. I'd play Rutgers. I'd play Washington.
I said Michigan.
UCLA. I'd play Purdue. I would play Michigan this year. Michigan has been an absolute joke this year. They have been a shell of themselves. But once again, this is proof in the pudding. The Big Ten will get high rankings no matter what they do and who they lose. You lost your head coach and your starting quarterback, and you're considered a top 4 team in the country. That is a lie. And it's a lie no matter who you are. Dylan Gabriel, again, at UCF, was not even regarded as a returning quarterback when he came back. They put a list up on the screen. Here are the returning quarterbacks in FBS. They didn't even put him on the list. Came back
Probably
to
because
UCF.
he's gotten a lot better since then.
He was good at UCF. Good enough for Oklahoma to get him in the transfer portal. Good enough for Oregon to go and get him after that. Look at everywhere he's been. He goes to UCF, and the team's good, right? He gets recruited there. He's behind Mackenzie Milton. And in his second college game ever, he has to play LSU in a bowl game. In his second college football game ever. How many quarterbacks are good in their second college football game ever, including the best of the best and the brightest? So, and he loses by 8.
Trevor Lawrence was pretty good.
He loses by 8. That's Trevor Lawrence. So he loses by 8. Beyond that, he goes to Oklahoma, and Oklahoma last year had life. Then he goes to Oregon, only undefeated team in the country. So, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. The guys in the American, this is what I have to say, and I say this about the American all the time. The American Athletic, if their schools weren't good, you wouldn't try to poach them. If their coaches weren't good, you wouldn't try to poach them. ACC, SEC, it doesn't matter. They go after these coaches. They've got the SEC, who is the best conference in football, has gone after the American multiple times. And if their players aren't good, then they wouldn't be going to the NFL, and you wouldn't be poaching them. The American Athletic has become a breeding ground, a growth ground, a let's re-recruit ground. The American, North Texas will go out and get a kid. UTSA will go get a kid. Army will go get it. Somebody will, well, not Army because they're in the military.
Well, they can't get Army because of the
UTSA
military
will go
academy.
do it. Temple will go do it. Rice will go do it. They'll go get players, UAB. UAB talked about it. Trent Dilfer talked about it. He said, there's coaches around the country who know my roster better than I do because they're studying and they're trying to pull these kids. So the American has had institutional coaching and student-athlete poaching. So if they're not that good, why does everybody want their players? Why does everybody want their coaches? Every year they want their coaches, and they want their institutions. The Big 12 gains UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston, and the crazy response, it was idiotic. It was highly strange and ironic that here are these 3 teams in the American, and people are going, they ain't nothing. They're in the American. They suck. They don't play anybody. Then they became Big 12 teams. People were like, we got the 3 best schools out there we could possibly gotten. These teams are great. And I was like, wait a minute. All you did was switch the logo. That's all you did. And UCF came in, and UCF was playing spoiler and doing things last year. Cincinnati, I don't knock Cincinnati because they lost Luke Fickell. That's going to take time. But here's the difference. Michigan loses Jim Harbaugh, top 4 team in the preseason. Cincinnati loses Luke Fickell. Nobody's talking about them because they lost their guy. Normally, when you lose your head coach and you have a really, really successful program, you're going to struggle a little bit. But we saw Michigan fall reluctantly. We saw them fall to the chagrin of the AP and the coaches poll because it didn't seem like anybody wanted to let them fall out. You had a Michigan BS team this year ranked above Army and Navy when Army and Navy were undefeated. Because the military academies, and it doesn't matter if they were independent or in a conference, they don't get respect. They just don't. Now, Air Force hasn't been good. But Navy, it's been a long time since Navy's been this good. They deserve to be in there. Army has fought their way back over the last few years to get in the top 25 for the first time in forever. And then that was a few years ago. I think they got to 23. And then we see what they've done this year. All I ask for is equal treatment for scheduling. And you say, okay, well, the Big Ten, their suck teams are worse than are better than the American suck teams. And I would say
by a lot.
Not by a lot. Purdue, anybody could play Purdue. Purdue is this year's UMass. So, I mean, Purdue, anyone to argue Purdue is a good game, that's not a good game. Purdue this year.
I'm not saying Purdue's going to beat the best team in the American.
But I'm saying Purdue.
But if you're putting Maryland, bottom against bottom,
but
if you're putting Purdue against the bottom of the American, Purdue would kick the crap out of them.
I don't think so. And I also don't see this as a way to say, okay, Indiana, you played unranked, so you played unranked number 80, and the American played unranked
Purdue versus
number
FAU.
85. FAU just fired their coach. That's not a fair argument.
Well, that's the team at the bottom of the American. Okay, Tulsa.
Tulsa is a team that now Kevin Wilson.
That Purdue will beat.
I don't know. I honestly can't sit here and tell you that I'm going
to
guarantee.
You said bottom versus
Tulsa.
bottom.
Bottom versus.
I'm giving you bottom versus bottom.
And I'm saying Purdue versus. Okay, so Temple's fired their coach, but I'm looking at bottom versus.
Doesn't matter. Like who would?
I'm looking at an interim. If you got an interim head coach, I'm not expecting that team to win anything because they're literally
talking about at bare bones exactly how they are right now.
Right, and I'm looking at if it's an interim. If Purdue had an interim coach, then I would go on to the next team. Because an interim coach is telling me that there is a lot of problems going on at that school. So when it comes to Temple, when it comes to FAU, when it comes to Rice, they've all fired their coaches. So I'm not going to sit here. Now, East Carolina, they fired their coach early, wrongly, in my opinion. I respect the school and I respect Mike Houston. They wrongly fired their coach. They're 7-3 right, or 7-4 right now. So to me, that was a big mistake, but they made that choice. They're 5-2 in the conference. That made no sense. That made no sense to me whatsoever. But looking at the Big Ten and saying that there's 2 arguments that I have here. So if Northwestern, Maryland, UCLA, the Americans played UCLA and beaten UCLA. UCLA hasn't been a good team in a long time. So they've actually played them head-to-head and actually beaten them head-to-head. So Maryland,
which American team though?
Memphis. So I mean,
top of the conference
at the time.
We're talking bare bones, bottom to bottom.
Yeah, I would
bottom
play
to
UCLA.
bottom.
I would play UCLA. I'd play Northwestern.
I'd
play Maryland. I'd play Purdue. I'd play Michigan State. I'd play Rutgers. I'd play Wisconsin because Wisconsin's all over.
Let's say bottom 6 teams: UAB, North Texas, Rice, Temple, Tulsa, and FAU. Pair them head-to-head against Purdue, Maryland, Northwestern, UCLA, Michigan State, and Rutgers. I'm taking the Big Ten to win at least 5 of those games.
Charlotte. And we said Charlotte. So we didn't say Charlotte. We said UAB.
Charlotte was further up.
So
I just went bottom 6 in each conference.
Again, if you have an interim head coach on the Big Ten or the American, I'm not putting that team in there because I don't know if those players have quit. I don't know if those players are ready to transfer. But it
doesn't matter though because
it does matter.
they
If you
still
have an
to play
interim
the
head coach,
games.
it absolutely matters.
They still
if you
have to
an
play
interim.
games.
If you fire your coach, that could change your entire locker room for the rest of the year. That does matter because you're not going to get the best out of it.
I'm not saying it doesn't matter.
That's like saying,
but you've still got to play the games.
That's like saying when Memphis played Penn State and Mike Norvell left for Florida State that was a fair game. He wasn't the coach.
Fair.
It wasn't a fair game. If he was the head coach, Memphis would have played a lot better.
I didn't say fair is a fair game. I said fair argument.
Okay, well, I want a fair game. I want a fair. If this is your coach versus
okay, give them their coach. Give them their coach back beginning of the year. I'm still taking the Big Ten 10 times out of 10.
You can take the Big Ten. You can take the Big Ten all you want. Maryland hasn't been a good team in a long time. They've had an okay season.
I didn't say they don't have to be a good team. They just have to be better than the bottom of the American.
Well, what about the top of the American? If they're all treated the same,
then play the top of the Big Ten. See what happens.
Michigan.
If the top 4 teams let's just say the top 5 teams in each conference. So in the American, the top 5 teams in the American: Army, Tulane, Navy, Memphis, East Carolina.
Yeah.
If they had to play, and listen to this gauntlet that they would have to go through: Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana, Penn State, Illinois.
Give me Illinois.
The only teams that
the
American might be able to put up a fight against is Indiana and Illinois.
Fine.
The other 3, they'd get blown out. And I still think Indiana and Illinois would beat them.
I'll give Oregon with their former American athletic quarterback the edge because people forget that he was in the American for 2 years at least. So I will give Dylan Gabriel the edge at Oregon because
4 years ago.
He's been good. It doesn't matter. Why was he recruitable by Oklahoma? He was in the American.
Because he kept getting better.
In the
and
American.
Why did he go to Oregon? Because he kept getting better.
Okay, so he won in the American. Good enough for the Big 12 to think he could win in the Big 12, which he did. Good enough for the Big 10 to think he could win in the Big 10, which he's the number 1 team. He's with the number 1 team in the country. If you think Dylan Gabriel is good right now, and you don't think he was good back then Oklahoma wouldn't have recruited him, and Oregon wouldn't have recruited him from Oklahoma.
They could see potential.
Oh,
when they see potential, you see a guy that can get better.
And what he did in the American. Why are the American coaches getting hired to the SEC if they suck and the conference sucks and everybody
Well, you're not
sucks?
going to poach somebody from the SEC that's already a head coach.
You can poach somebody from
Somebody's not going to go from the SEC to the SEC.
Okay, so if you take someone
unless
from the
you're
American
going to
and you're the SEC, you're stating what? That the coach sucks and you're telling your fan base we're going to take this guy.
Your coach sucks.
You think he wins. You think he's going to be good. You think he's done enough in the American. Who did Wisconsin hire? Luke Fickell. Where did Luke Fickell go? Cincinnati. What did he do at Cincinnati? Made them a program. So if you're hiring from the American and you're recruiting,
and where's Wisconsin right now?
And you're recruiting out of the American, then you're stating that they're talented enough for you to go and poach their players and their coaches and their institutions. No one steals from an empty house. So if this is good enough for them to go and get and take, then that's stating an obvious fact. UCF was good, struggle a little bit, good, struggle a little bit. And what did the Big 12 do? We want the whole thing. Cincinnati got to the college football playoff. What did the Big 12 do? We want the whole thing. Houston should have been in the college football playoff. And what did they do? They said, we want Houston. Bring it all back, baby. And they took all of that into the Big 12. Dylan Gabriel is not the only guy that has found his way into a quote-unquote power conference because they believe that these guys are good. That's the difficult part of being in the American, is the American finds the diamond in the rough and the SEC goes, oh, thank you. The ACC
there's
goes,
plenty of good players and coaches.
You're too kind.
There's plenty of good players and coaches. You're right. They wouldn't be coming to poach them if they weren't good.
Right. So they're
but
good.
But if we're talking about the team as a whole, the American can't recruit the same type of players that the SEC or the Big Ten can recruit. They just can't.
They don't have the money.
They don't have the well. That's besides the point. I'm all for, and this is a separate conversation. I am all for these kids being able to make money, but teams should not be able to buy recruits.
That's what they're doing.
Look what just happened with the kid that just switched from LSU to Michigan, the quarterback. And it's because Michigan offered him a $12 million NIL deal.
Yeah.
That should not happen.
And because of that,
is taking
Michigan will be ranked
far.
in the top 4 next year before the season starts.
Well, he's probably not going to start next year, but
it doesn't matter.
Besides the point.
They'll
go. Regardless,
we're planning on the future, and we think the future's bright.
No, Michigan's not going to be in the top 10 next year. Michigan will be lucky to be in the top 20 next year.
They will most certainly be in the top 10 next year, or
they'll
else
be lucky to be in the top 20 next year.
They would break they would break their unholy background shadow rule.
They're 5-5. They're not going to put a team that finishes the season barely making a bowl game in the top 10.
If Michigan,
it's just not going to happen.
If Michigan can jump people,
Michigan was number 4
at
the beginning of the year because they won the national championship. When you look at future odds for teams to win, all right,
you're not going to win the national championship when you lose your quarterback and your head coach.
When the Dodgers beat the Yankees in the World Series, they automatically make World Series odds for the following year.
For a day. Of course,
the Dodgers were the favorite. They just won.
For a day.
Why was Michigan in the top 4? Because they just won.
No, Michigan's in the top.
Then why were they going to be there?
Then why was Michigan in the top 5? Why were they in the top 5 the year before that? The year before that? The year before that? The year before that? Why were they?
Because it's Michigan.
Because they're Michigan.
They just won a national championship.
I'm not talking about that.
Yes, they lost a lot. Then that's the same thing to Florida State. Why were they ranked as high as they were? They're 1-9.
And that was wrong. And who agreed with that? Did Dan agree with that? Did I say that they were going to win the ACC? Did I pick them to win the ACC? No, I picked Clemson.
I'm not saying you did.
I picked Clemson. And I also said, and my reasoning was, DJ is not the answer to this team. You don't have Jordan Travis. You just lost a bunch of guys to the NFL. You just lost a bunch of guys to the transfer portal. Florida State's not the same team. Michigan's not the same team. The difference between Michigan and the rest of the nation is that if you are Michigan or Ohio State, go back and look at it. If you are named Michigan or Ohio State or Notre Dame, it doesn't matter who your quarterback is, your coach. It doesn't matter who left, who stayed, who did this and who did that. If you are named Ohio State, Michigan, or Notre Dame, you are firmly planted in an unfair advantage at the beginning of the season. And I've talked to fans of these teams that have gone, Dan, you're not wrong. We know we have that. We know if we beat every crap team ahead of us that's unranked in BS, we're going to be protected. We know if we play a bullshit schedule, we're going to be protected. We know that. We know that if any other team in the country, in the American, in the Sun Belt, in Conference USA, plays the same crap schedule, they're not going to be protected. We know why do you think the Big Ten plays 9 games and not 8 conference games? Because they know they're protected. They play less non-conference. What do they tell the American all the time? What do they tell the Sun Belt? What do they tell the Mountain West? What do they tell Conference USA? What do they
I'm just waiting for the Big Ten SEC
play
championship.
Non-conference games that make you look good, because if you beat them, you're going to have some credence at the end of the season. You're going to have some respect. You're going to have some love at the end of the season. If you play these tough teams, you got to play these tough teams. Why? The Big Ten doesn't have to play them. The Big Ten plays 3 instead of 4. Why? Because they don't have to. You think Michigan's going to keep scheduling the Texases of the world? No, because when Michigan did the one thing that I've said to you for years, Michigan plays a tough non-conference schedule. Show me who they are. They absolutely, positively sucked in good games. They played like crap when they were challenged because the Big Ten does not get challenged. They get challenged within their conference, and so does everybody else. But the ACC gets no respect for challenging themselves in their own conference. The SEC there's no team that's undefeated in the conference. There's no team that's undefeated in general. And if I threw the Big Ten into the SEC, they'd beat the crap out of the Big Ten. The SEC, who would they not beat? Besides Oregon, who I still think is a Pac-12 team, besides Oregon, Ohio State's not coming out with 2 or 3 blemishes. Michigan's going to get buried this year. Illinois would be a non-factor. Indiana would have lost.
I'm not saying they wouldn't have 2 or 3 losses.
No, but they would. Okay, but they would all be.
But Ohio State
they would be
very competitive in the SEC.
They can be competitive. But
So would Penn State.
I don't think Ohio State's better than Ole Miss. I don't think Ohio State is better than Alabama.
Yes, they are.
I don't think
Oh my
better.
God.
Ole Miss?
Florida beat Ole Miss. Florida sucks.
And Ole Miss beat Georgia, and Georgia blew out Clemson. You think season in and season out, Ohio State could hang with the Floridas and the Ole Misses and the Tennessees,
Well, they beat Georgia
and the
at
Alabamas
home.
and the Georgias and the Auburns and the Texases.
Could you imagine if any
No
of
way.
these SEC teams went into the horseshoe in November when it's snowing?
I don't care about where they play. I care about who they're playing. I don't care where they play.
You got to play the game somewhere.
Ohio State could play Ole Miss on the moon. I'm picking Ole Miss.
I'm taking Ohio State 10
Because
times out of 10 in
Ohio
that game.
State's not going to score 56 points. They're going to have to hope to Jesus that their defense can show up. Because there's no way the SEC would gobble up every single conference in this country. There is no one that can hang with the SEC on a 8-week schedule. If Ohio State had to play 8 weeks in the SEC, if Michigan had to play 8 weeks in the SEC, Illinois, Indiana, Rutgers, Wisconsin.
Let's give them a realistic SEC schedule. Let's take Tennessee's schedule. Let's imagine they had to play Tennessee's schedule. Chattanooga, they'd blow them out. NC State, they'd blow them out. Kent State, they'd blow them out. Oklahoma, they're probably beating Oklahoma. They're 4-0. Arkansas, they're probably beating Arkansas. Florida, they are probably beating Florida. Alabama, okay. I'm going to give them a loss. Don't really know. Let's just say it's a loss. Kentucky, win. Mississippi State, win. Georgia, okay. Maybe that's your second loss.
So you're only giving
UTEP and Vanderbilt. That's 2 losses in the SEC. According to this reasonable SEC schedule of Tennessee. Now let's say they played Alabama's schedule. Western Kentucky win. South Florida win. Georgia, again, let's say that's a loss. Vanderbilt win. South Carolina win. Tennessee could go either way. I'm probably going to give them a win for that one.
Who are we picking here? Ohio State?
Ohio State, if they were to play Alabama's schedule.
The one team that I said might win a few games, but none of those.
Okay, let's go Penn State then.
Penn State.
Let's say Penn State in the SEC.
Throw Penn State in the SEC.
Okay, Penn State versus Tennessee schedule. Chattanooga.
Just get rid of the non-conference because we know the Big Ten doesn't play.
Let's talk conference. Tennessee also played NC State, who I think Penn State would beat. Okay, in conference.
This year.
Oklahoma. I think they beat Oklahoma. Arkansas. They beat Arkansas. Florida. They're going to beat Florida. Kills me, but they're going to beat Florida. Lose to Alabama, that's fine. Kentucky, they'll beat Kentucky. They'll beat Mississippi State. You can lose to Georgia. You'll beat UTEP. You'll beat Tennessee. That's 2 losses. 2 losses in the SEC with this type of conference and college football playoff alignment is not a big deal. Ole Miss is probably out of the playoff now, having lost their 3rd game in the SEC. But their losses are having lost their 3rd game in general. Because they're actually, no, all 3 losses are in the SEC. Because their issue is they lost to 2. Actually, wait. Hang on. 1. Oh, no, they beat Georgia. What am I saying? They lost to 2 unranked teams. 2, what I would say, are not very good teams. Decent if you put them in any other. I mean, Florida and Kentucky are probably near the top of any of the group of 5 conferences this year. But obviously in the SEC, they're middle of the pack near the bottom. They lost. So Ole Miss lost to LSU by 3, Kentucky by 3, and Florida by 7. They're out. I mean, unless something crazy happens where, maybe Indiana loses again. Maybe Clemson doesn't win the ACC championship. Tennessee maybe loses one more time. Other than that, they're not going to be in.
Well,
it's a 3-loss SEC team.
I'll flip the script. Alabama plays Ohio State's schedule this year. Akron win, Western Michigan win, Marshall win, Michigan State win, Iowa win, Oregon,
Loss.
Let's say Oregon wins that one. Nebraska win. Penn State against Alabama. I'm taking Alabama. Purdue win. Northwestern win. Indiana win. Michigan win. So in the same argument, okay, they have one loss, maybe two.
I don't think anything would change.
But I'm saying Ohio State. I mean, that's Ohio State's
I'm
schedule.
not for a second going to sit here and say that the Big Ten is a harder conference than the SEC because it's not.
They're not.
It's not.
Right? Nobody plays a tougher schedule than the SEC. Nobody plays a tougher schedule.
The top of those conferences could match up head-to-head pretty well.
But the great thing about the top of the Big Ten is they don't get challenged most of the time. Oregon coming in and Washington coming in, that's good.
It's not their fault that the rest of the Big Ten stinks.
It is their fault that the rest of the Big Ten stinks because the American at the top gets blamed for the rest of the conference. The Sun Belt at the top gets blamed for the rest of the conference. All I've ever asked is, and it doesn't have to be the Big Ten. It could be the SEC. It could be the ACC. It could be the Sun Belt. It doesn't matter. It's saying the top of the conference is good. You just said the top shouldn't get blamed for the rest. Then the top of the American shouldn't get blamed for the rest. And the top.
But again,
of the
if you
Mountain
put
West
the American against anybody else, they're going to lose. Why is the Mountain
West getting so much love? Who's good in the Mountain West? Boise State. Who else is good in the Mountain West? But they've been said since the preseason that they're going to get in the college football playoff. No matter what. No matter what. And what seed are they going to get? 12. Out of 12. That Indiana gets blown out, but they're going to get a better seed than Ohio State? Give me Indiana. Give Boise State Indiana. Let their running back who's got 5,000 yards, let him run all over them all day long. But people
Boise State would win.
But okay. But that's what I'm saying. If the top
because Boise State's a really good team.
Okay. If the top of, but their conference is what? It's a moot point. It's a moot. Are they undefeated?
They've been challenged. They lost by 3 at Oregon.
Okay. But beyond that, we're talking about conference. You said if you're at the top of your conference, you should not be punished for the shit in the rest of the conference. So if that is your statement, you have to take that statement and apply it to every single conference. And if you do that, you would be arguing that Army and Tulane should not be responsible for FAU. You're arguing that Oregon should not be responsible for Purdue. You're arguing Boise State shouldn't be responsible for the rest of their conference. You're arguing that Clemson and SMU should not be responsible for Wake Forest and company. And
Florida
Cal
State
and
this
Stanford.
Year.
So if that's your argument, if that is your argument that the top should not be responsible for the rest, then give that argument to Army, give it to Tulane, give it to Clemson, give it to SMU, and instead of
I'm not taking
Big
it away
Ten
from
teams
Clemson and SMU because Clemson and SMU are ranked too low.
Right, but all I'm saying is you admit you just said
they don't like the
you
ACC.
Just said what I've been saying for years. I have not 5-6
but
years.
Also look at the top.
I didn't say boo about the Big Ten 5 or 6 years ago. The only reason why I mentioned them has nothing to do with the Big Ten. And Greg, I know you're watching and listening, and I can't say this more clearly in your face, but I'm not talking about an anti-Big Ten. I am literally saying that I have paid attention as an impartial broadcaster to the entire country. And I have said, wow, the Big 12 got screwed. The Pac-12's treated like they're somebody's lackey over here. When you look at the way the country has worked and the way the College Football Playoff Committee has thought, they wanted 2 Big Ten, one SEC, and then they had a little wild card. That's all it was. I could literally tell you blindly at the beginning of the season, Alabama, Clemson, Big Ten, maybe another Big Ten, maybe a wild card. That's what it was. Then Clemson didn't play that well for a year, God forbid, and they wanted to throw them out. They were never going to let Wake Forest in when Wake Forest was undefeated, and then they lost the last 2 weeks, so that was the committee freeing themselves up. They were never going to let that team in. Syracuse, my goodness, oh my gosh, this is the year that Syracuse went 10-3. You can't put Syracuse in there when they have 9 wins. It's Syracuse. It's not big enough. So if
3 losses doesn't help their cause.
College football play, no, but if that was Ohio State, they'd be like, man, think about the year. Just think about this. Just think about the stupidity of an argument. Cincinnati goes to Notre Dame, beats Notre Dame. Notre Dame's quarterback was playing. Nobody had a boo-boo owie. Everybody was out there. So Notre Dame plays a game against Cincinnati, healthy versus healthy. Cincinnati comes in. They're unranked, like Northern Illinois. They beat Notre Dame head-to-head by double digits. And at the end of the season, there were people arguing that Notre Dame should get in over Cincinnati after Cincinnati beat them.
Was that the year Cincinnati got in, or was it the year after?
It was the year that they got in. They were
Anyone that was trying to make that argument is full of it.
But that in and of itself, that's
that's not an acceptable argument.
Okay, but that's the argument. This is why I've taken the stance I've taken against.
But that is a situation that I am all for the head-to-head. Cincinnati beat Notre Dame head-to-head. If those are the two teams you're thinking about, Cincinnati gets in because they beat Notre Dame head-to-head.
And what
just the way it is.
And what I'm saying in these arguments, and I've tried to make this clear, is this has never been an anti-Big Ten. I could care less. I want fairness, and I would say the same thing about the SEC. If they tried to let a 3-loss Ole Miss team in right now,
they're going to let a freaking 3-loss Alabama team in.
But they're
going to.
And what I said,
because they've got a hard on for Alabama.
What I said in the past about Alabama, they were the only team in the country in a 4-team college football playoff that could lose 2 games and get in. That now it never happened, but
Thank God.
But I firmly believe that Alabama could lose 2 or 3 games, and they're still going to argue them. Now, a 3-loss Ole Miss team, and looking at a 1-loss this and a 1-loss that, this is where I get frustrated and where I get bothered by this, is that if I'm in a conference and I am undefeated in the conference like Army and Tulane are, they're both 7-0. If I'm undefeated and I've only lost a game, in Army's case,
and Tulane's losses are to decent teams as well.
Yeah, and I'm looking at this. And by the way,
I think Tulane's got a better case than Army does.
Well, and the thing with Tulane that frustrates the heck out of me is Tulane doesn't have Willie Fritz anymore. He's at Houston. So Tulane got where they got with Willie. And when Willie left, John Summerall has them playing in a championship game, as if Willie Fritz never left. So to me, it's like I don't just look at like the name of the team and go, okay, that makes sense. I look at the team and I go, they lost their coach and they're in the top 2. They lost their starting quarterback and they're here. Look at what Oklahoma just beat Alabama, but Oklahoma's season hasn't been good. Then they lost Dylan Gabriel. Look at the difference between Oregon and Oklahoma. One lost Dylan Gabriel, one gained Dylan Gabriel. Bo Nix was there last year at Oregon. You lose Bo Nix, you gain Dylan Gabriel, you're the best team in the country. So, and talk to any team about anything. And I'm not trying to say that all the other positions don't matter, because they do. But your quarterback, think about this. You got a good quarterback versus a not good quarterback, and what happens? You go from the top of the mountain to underneath the bridge. Like, that's the position where you got to get it right. You have to get it right. Syracuse without Kyle McCord this year, they maybe win 2 games, maybe 3. So, like, because their schedule this year wasn't as difficult. They didn't play Clemson. They didn't have to play SMU. So,
can I just butt in for just a second, on a separate note about Kyle McCord?
Yeah,
that kid can throw the football. Wherever he gets drafted this year, he's going to be a decent NFL quarterback. He may not be a starter, right? He's not going to be a starter right away. But he may go somewhere. He may get a starting job in a couple of years, and he's going to be solid. That kid's got really good arm talent. But you're right. Syracuse would not be where they are right now without Kyle McCord. That was a great job. Great job by Fran Brown to go get him. Yeah. That was a massive pickup. And I've watched a few Syracuse games. I'm not going to sit here for a second and say I've watched every play of every game, every throw he's ever made, right? But the kid's got arm talent that you can't teach. When somebody's got an intangible for a quarterback that you can't teach,
yeah,
he throws a really good ball. He hits his guys in stride. Does he make the best throws all the time? No, but nobody's going to. He throws his fair share of interceptions, maybe a little more than you'd like to see in college football, but still, the kid can throw the football. I'm sorry, I just wanted to interject there and just make that point because he's been very good for them this year.
Yeah, he's
I'm
been
interested
incredible.
to see where he ends up in the NFL.
He's been absolutely incredible. Now, and again, to make it very, very clear, when the Big Ten does good things, and I haven't said anything negative about Oregon this year.
I'm waiting for the All Big Ten National Championship
yeah,
game.
I've
Oregon, Ohio State, round 2.
Well, listen, if you have more balls in the lottery spinner, you got a better chance of getting in. I would love to be a conference that has 4 teams. Then you got 4 teams in the college football playoff. You got a third of the college football playoff shot to get in. That must be nice. If you got one, you got to rely on that one.
They'll probably only have 3.
Well, this is
Well,
how if they want to get,
I think they find a way to get Indiana out of there.
Well, if they do, all I'm saying is when you put a graphic up, when you put a statement on the screen that says on Tuesday for a game that's played on Saturday, if Indiana doesn't make it, they have a 96% probability of getting in. That is the Big Ten unfair, unjust advantage that I am speaking about with everybody. That is what I'm
Purdue could play spoiler.
That is what I'm speaking about. Because Army undefeated, there was no graphic that said, hey, if Army loses this game to Notre Dame, they got a 90% chance of getting it. No, they have a 90% chance of getting out. I mean, Notre Dame can play literally anybody that's good on paper. But the years that Notre Dame made it in, Notre Dame got embarrassed in the college football playoff.
Yeah, because those were also the years they didn't play anybody.
Yeah, they got embarrassed.
They don't play anybody. They make the college football playoff, and then they get blown out because they didn't play anybody.
And Ohio State and Michigan, all but 2 years, the first year for Ohio State and the last one for Michigan, they don't look good either. So, I mean, it's kind of been proven.
Well, because they're getting matched up against ridiculously good SEC teams.
After playing almost nobody. The SEC...
I don't think it... Honestly, I don't think it matters
that
you play. I don't think it matters as much that you play a weak schedule. I think it matters that you're just inferior to the teams that are there.
I think it matters
because when you had so
if you play a weak schedule, then you shouldn't be in. That's how I look.
I'm gonna use an example. You're not gonna like the example, but I think it's a good example. The 2020 when Alabama went undefeated with Tua and won the national championship. That Cincinnati team, did they deserve to be there? Yes. We talked about this. We agree on this. They beat Notre Dame. They deserve to be there. They got blown out because that Alabama team was so head and shoulders better than them.
Yeah.
If they play, I want to try to remember what the.
But I will say this: when I interviewed Nick Saban after the game, and I said, Coach, what are your thoughts on Cincinnati and Luke Fickell on the other side? What's your take on them? He said, there is no doubt in my mind, this is coming from Nick Saban, so if you don't respect my words, Nick Saban's words were, there is no doubt in my mind that the team on the other side deserved to be here, absolutely. And I will argue that the College Football Playoff Committee aided, maybe indirectly, in the firing of Jimbo Fisher from Texas A&M, because they should have been in the College Football Playoff in that season before COVID. So, I mean, they should have been the 3. They shouldn't even have gotten in. They should have gotten in and been the 3. But they let Notre Dame in. And Notre Dame played like crap again. I mean, Ohio State has scored 0 points. These teams have been blown out. I mean, you look at the Pac-12, between Washington against Alabama getting blown out years ago and then them getting in this year, there was a massive gap because the Pac-12 was given no respect. It was like, if you're Oregon, we may let you in if you go undefeated. But when you're locking in 2 spots for Ohio State and Michigan for at least the last 3 years, if not 4 years, and saying, we don't care who you play as long as you go undefeated or you have 1 loss. Basically, Ohio State and Michigan, to me, outside looking in, it was like, let's beat everybody, and then one of us will beat the other one, and we're both secure. And that's how it worked. And that's why I'm happy the college football playoff has been expanded. That's all I'm saying. I'm 39 years old. And within the last 5 or 6 years, I've watched college football's unjust treatment of everyone else versus the Big Ten and Notre Dame. And yeah, you could probably put Alabama in there too. The difference between Alabama and the Big Ten is Alabama shows up more than they don't, and so does Georgia. So, to me,
Cincinnati got in 21.
Yeah, they got in 2020, 21. So, but
okay, I was
yeah, because it was after COVID, and I was there for the game.
They got in, 21, the 21-22 season.
I was there for the 2020.
Wait,
but because the first thing out of COVID, no, it was the year.
Yeah, that's right.
Because
because the 2020-2021 was the year Notre Dame got in.
They played in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl,
and Alabama beat them by 17.
Yeah. So when you go back, all I'm saying, and again, I would say this about the ACC, I'd say it about anybody. But Jim Boeheim agreed with me about the Big Ten because it doesn't just go to football, it goes to basketball. When Boeheim stood at the podium and said, you let 9 or 10 teams in from the Big Ten, and the ACC, you let in 5, and we had a better record than the entire Big Ten.
How does that make sense in basketball?
It doesn't.
The ACC is head and shoulders above the Big Ten in college basketball, and it's not even close.
The Big Ten has an unfair advantage in general. When you have 14 teams in the Big Ten at the time, and you're letting in 10 of them, I mean, Tom Izzo, it doesn't matter, and I love Tom. I have all the respect in the world, okay? Tom Izzo could have any record. Like almost 18-13, doesn't matter. If Syracuse is 18-13, they're not even letting them in the NIT. But if Tom Izzo has,
I mean the CIT.
If he has an 18-13 record, he's in. But that's all I'm saying. I'm asking people. I'm an impartial broadcaster. I don't come on this show and say Syracuse is going to win every game unless I firmly believe it and I give my evidence as to why. So I don't have any issue with the Big Ten. I don't have any issue with Michigan. I don't have any issue with Ohio State. I'm just stating what it is. If it was Illinois, if it was South Carolina, I don't care. What I'm saying is there should not, because you just said to me, why should Florida State be in the top 10 this year? They shouldn't have been. So.
But how are you to expect that team's going to go 2-9?
You're not going to expect the team's going to go 2-9. How are you going to expect that Michigan's going to go 5-5? But the difference between
you kind of have to take a guess.
The difference between Florida
that's how you figure out the initial poll.
The difference between Florida State and Michigan is that Michigan is always there. Florida State is not. Florida State has not been consistently preseason at the top since Jameis Winston. So they're not a team that people are expecting to be there. They weren't there at the end of Jimbo Fisher. They were never there with Willie Taggart, and they weren't there at the beginning of Mike Norvell. So Florida State.
I'm worried Mike Norvell's not going to survive the offseason.
Well,
it's not his fault.
I'm hoping that he does because, again, I would partially blame the committee. If Mike Norvell gets fired, I would put partial blame on the College Football Playoff Committee.
I'd put all the blame on the College Football Playoff Committee.
And that's another thing. That's another argument. That's another argument for the Big Ten is you didn't let Florida State in, but if Ohio State lost their quarterback, they wouldn't do that to Ohio State. And they didn't do that to Alabama. Alabama changed their quarterback.
Things would have just been so much easier if Georgia had beaten Alabama in the SEC championship game last year.
Things would have been so much easier if they
because
left
Georgia would have been 1, Michigan would have been 2, Washington would have been 3, and Florida State would have been 4, all undefeated. It would have been very, very simple. But by Alabama beating Georgia, it then opened up the can of worms and said, hey, we want to put Texas in, but you can't put Texas in without Alabama because Alabama beat them head-to-head. You had to.
Right.
I mean, anyone that would, in that particular situation, in order for Texas to be in, you have to put Alabama in.
But that's the issue.
It was never a question.
That's the issue, though. And so, if I had to say to you, brass tacks, because I want to prove my point here, that I'm looking at this completely impartially. If I asked you right now, think about no wins or losses. It's the beginning of the season. Tell me the college football teams that you believe, regardless of conference. I just want to hear it. There's 134 FBS teams. You tell me the teams that you believe are protected and argued more for than against no matter what. Regardless of conference, who are the teams that you believe are protected?
What do you mean by protected? Like they're just always there, and
the ones
this is week 0.
The
this
ones
is
that are going to do everything
rankings.
in their power to argue them into the college football playoff. The ones that you think
Alabama.
Okay, and who else?
That's the list. Alabama.
My list is Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia, Notre Dame. There's 5. Let me think. Is there anybody that I would argue in the Pac-12? No. In the ACC,
reason why
no.
I think that it's just Alabama.
They don't give it to Clemson.
So the reason why I think it's just Alabama is because they've done it multiple times. They've found ways to put Alabama in the college football playoff every time. The only way Alabama didn't make it, I think there was only 1 year of the college football playoff that they did not make it, was when they had 3 losses or 2 losses. That's the only time that they didn't get in. Anytime they had 1 loss, they were in because they love Alabama. Saban and everything about Alabama. Oh, Alabama's got to be in. Have you seen them wanting to put other teams in? Sure.
Yeah.
But the clear advantage is to Alabama. Why is Alabama ranked ahead of Ole Miss? Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't Ole Miss beat Alabama?
Ole Miss.
No, they did not. They didn't play
this
each other
season.
Yet.
No,
they didn't play.
They beat Georgia.
They beat Georgia. Okay.
Yeah, I predicted that one.
Ole Miss beat Georgia. Georgia's got 2 losses. Alabama and Ole Miss both have 3. Realistically, Georgia should have more than 2 losses, but that's besides the point. The reason why I think it's just Alabama. Any SEC school can do whatever they want. Right? LSU had, and I'm going to say this as a fact, the greatest season in the history of college football. Joe Burrow had the greatest season by a quarterback in the history of college football. Single season. And I think it's hard to argue against that. I do think they would have beaten that following year's Alabama team. But they still find ways to put Alabama in every single year. Alabama is going to get in with 3 losses. Mark my words, it's going to happen. And I don't like that. Oh, because it's Alabama.
Yeah, that's the same.
Saban's gone.
It's the same.
The big bad Alabama is not the same big bad Alabama as it once was. They lost to Vanderbilt.
Yeah. My same argument for Michigan. My same argument
never beaten Alabama.
My same argument for Michigan. Michigan just lost
See,
too
this
many
is the
games.
reason why I think it's different. Because when Michigan and Ohio State have 1 loss each, who else are you trying to put in? They're usually one of them is going to be the Big Ten champion.
And I look at
they're not putting in both.
You realize that they never beat any ranked teams unless they're in their conference. They never beat any ranked teams out of their conference, and then they tell the other conferences who they think have weaker conferences that they have to play a tough non-conference schedule. You realize how backwards that is to say to the American, you better play at least 2 ranked teams that are really good that you think at the beginning of the year are going to be at the top at the end of the year, so you're going to have to prognosticate and jump through all these hoops. You better beat them. You better beat them. And then they tell Ohio State, all you got to do is beat Penn State and Michigan, and you're golden, baby. Come on.
Still got to win the Big Ten championship.
Come on. Okay, so I win the American championship. What do I get for it? You can go to the Armed Forces Bowl? Come on. Now, I'm going to say this about 2025. Notre Dame's schedule in 2025, I can't wait. So here it is. At Miami.
Who do they play?
At Miami, Texas A&M at home, Purdue at home, at Arkansas, Boise State at home. I'd like some of those to be roads. USC at home, Navy at home, at Boston College. Hey, what does this say? Yeah, at home. Okay. At Boston College, NC State, Syracuse, and at Pitt. Notre Dame, congratulations.
That's a very difficult
you
start
finally
to the
put
year.
Together a good schedule.
But again, keep in mind, these schedules are made 10 years in advance.
I know, but I'm just saying.
You can't plan for a team to be good 10 years from now.
No, but you have to do it if you're in the American. You have to do it if you're in the Sun Belt. You have to do it if you're in all these because you plan them.
It doesn't matter. You can't plan that.
But you have to if you're in the American. You have to. You better hope that those non-conference games
Ask the
end up being
ACC.
ranked
It didn't work for them.
teams. You have to do
If
it.
it didn't work for the ACC, it's not going to work for the American and anybody else.
But what I'm saying is when you plan in the future, it's got to be. It's got to be great. If you're in the American, I don't know why they hate the ACC right now. That doesn't make any sense to me.
I'm with you on that.
That
makes no sense.
But I will say this. Congratulations, Notre Dame, for finally putting together a schedule that makes me think that you're actually going to play competition next year.
Although I'm not going to lie to you, I think Miami's going to be terrible next year.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing that also benefits Notre Dame. Miami, no Cam Ward. Syracuse, no Kyle McCord. Congratulations. You know what I mean?
Boise State, no Ashton Jeanty.
Right. So you got to play.
Is that how you say his name?
Genty? Yeah. So I say Genty, but I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah. But
I remember seeing his name the first time. I'm like, how the heck do you say this guy's name?
But
and can I just point out, he should win the Heisman Trophy, and it should not be close.
No.
He should win the Heisman Trophy unanimously.
Absolutely.
He's going to have 35 touchdowns, close to 3,000 yards as a running back.
Yeah.
That is absurd.
Yeah.
Just give him the Heisman Trophy now. And if he doesn't win the Heisman Trophy, there should be an uproar among people. Uproar.
I absolutely agree with you that he should win the Heisman.
It's over now.
But, I mean...
only one,
there's
really not anybody else that's close.
I absolutely agree that he should win it. I really, really do.
Who else would win it?
Nobody. But...
Exactly.
But those teams that we talked about, they always got to have somebody in it. So, and by the way, can I just
Milroe's not winning it. Milroe hasn't exactly been all that good.
Let me be real about this.
Ohio State's quarterback isn't good.
Alabama, Jalen Milroe, and this is absolutely I
don't like Jalen Milroe. I don't think he's good.
I've never been sold on him. I am not surprised when I see Alabama's got a few losses. I'm not, because when you watch Jalen Milroe play, he's not the takeover a game right now. He's not. I'm not saying he'll never be, but right now he's not that takeover quarterback that I'm like, yeah. I'm not. Same thing about Jamarcus. I said about Jamarcus Russell at LSU when they won the national championship in the BCS. There's confetti falling on him. I walked up to my TV and I said, I don't buy it. I never bought into Jamarcus Russell. I never did. And
he just wanted money.
I never bought into Jamarcus Russell. Now, by the way, this is the projected college football playoff. The voting comes out tomorrow, and I get to be on these calls, which is a beautiful thing. And I'm going to try and hop on it tomorrow because my scheduling's been insane the last few weeks. But I do want to take a look at this. This is a projected one. Okay? So there's going to be different ones out there, but this is a projected one. There's a few let me see here. Okay.
Is this projected based on conference championship games too, or is it just as of now?
Yeah, this is projected based on what we're seeing. So they got Oregon 1, Texas 2, which I think they're the two best teams in the country.
Texas winning the SEC?
They do have Texas winning the SEC. They have Miami 3. Still have
I
Miami.
disagree with that, but that's
still
fine.
have Miami winning the ACC, even though Miami...
They can't.
Right.
They literally can't.
They can't play in it. Right. I understand. So they got Miami 3. They got Boise State 4, which I don't disagree with. And then they have Ohio State 5, Penn State 6. They have, my Lord, Notre Dame 7. They have Georgia 8, Tennessee 9. This one has SMU in it for the first time in forever. #Frozen. They have
they should be.
SMU 10, Indiana 11, Arizona State 12.
Arizona State winning the Big 12 is interesting to me.
Because I have Colorado. Well, Colorado.
So Colorado? I don't think they can play for it.
They just lost.
Because they just lost. I think still.
I had them going into.
It's going to be BYU and. Can BYU still win the Big 12?
BYU was at the top going into this week. Now, I want to shout out Kansas for a second here. Kansas.
Oh my God, they have played spoiler.
Kansas
all year long.
In the last 2 weeks, Kansas beat BYU, the number 1 team in the Big 12, gave them their first loss of the season, and beat Colorado this past week, who is the second team in the Big 12. Kansas has been a monster in the Big 12.
You know how the tiebreakers work in the Big 12?
Whoever wins the Big Ten.
Because as of right now, you're going to have 4 teams at 6-2.
Yeah. So right now, I want to take, so looking at the Big 12, yeah, so Arizona State, who could leapfrog, they did. So Arizona State is considered at the top, BYU, Iowa State, and then Colorado. So
I guess this factors in tiebreakers.
They're all 6-2. Well, head-to-head's got to be a factor, but
I would think.
I mean, head-to-head should be the first tiebreaker. So the Big 12 tiebreaker scenarios, this is what it looks like. I'll let you know. So let me get to...
And Arizona State just beat BYU.
So here's the 2-team tie scenario. The 2 teams tied at 7-2 will compete in the Big 12 Okay, 3-team tie scenario. If Colorado loses, Arizona State versus Iowa State. If Arizona State loses, Iowa State versus BYU. If Iowa State loses, Arizona State versus BYU.
What about a 4-team tie scenario? Does it have that?
So hold on one second. This is the 3-team one. Then they have the 4-team one. Hold on. So the 2-team tie is the 2 teams tied at 7-2 will compete. The 3-team, the ones I was reading, also in the 3-team.
I'm a little confused at the 3-team. If X loses,
so if there's 3 teams tied, and Colorado loses of those 4, that means that Arizona State, Iowa State, and BYU would be tied. Then Arizona State and Iowa State would go in. BYU would be left out. If Arizona State loses, then it would be Colorado, Iowa State, BYU. Colorado would be left out. If Iowa State loses, Colorado would be left out. It would be Arizona State versus BYU. If BYU loses, Texas Tech beats West Virginia, Baylor beats Kansas, and Cincinnati beats TCU. That's the only way to get Colorado in besides... No, I'm sorry. So
Colorado is basically done.
Colorado versus Iowa State. And then if BYU... Well, Colorado could still get in. And then if it's a 4-team
Well, what's the actual...
tie,
So what does it say the actual tiebreaker is?
So
as it stands right now, is it going to be Arizona State, BYU?
It's telling me who's playing. So it's Arizona State, Iowa State if there's a 4-team tie. So
BYU would be out completely.
Yeah, they're in the best position to get in. So
boy, what a fall from grace they've had.
It says Colorado needs a lot. Not only do the Buffaloes need BYU to lose, they also need Texas Tech to defeat West Virginia. Only chance to get in. Then BYU, on the other hand, gets in with a loss from either Arizona State or Iowa State. So basically, Arizona State and Iowa State control their destiny. How crazy is that? Going into this
Arizona State plays Arizona. That's no slouch because it's a rivalry game.
But going into this, and Iowa State plays Iowa.
Iowa State plays Kansas State, Kansas State's a decent team.
They don't play Iowa. So
Kansas State Iowa plays Kansas State, that is not an easy game.
But looking at this,
Kansas State is a very good 8-3 team.
Think about this. 2 weeks ago, BYU was undefeated. 2 weeks ago, BYU was in the college football playoff.
They would have been the 4 seed.
So 2 weeks ago, BYU
they were number
was
6
there.
in the country.
Now BYU has to, no matter what, like if BYU wins and Arizona State and Iowa State win, they still have to watch. Think about this. They'll be out. Iowa State was forgotten. I said this past week, Arizona State, don't count them out. I picked them to win this past week. So Arizona State, because I saw that they were right there. So Arizona State being where they are right now, Colorado had a rough start and then swung back into it and all of a sudden got back into the good graces in the nation of some. BYU was in the good graces. And now both of those teams that were in the top 2, BYU, Colorado, going into this past weekend, could both be watching the Big 12 championship. That's insane. And you know what? Shout out to the Big 12 for being competitive.
Yeah. I mean, realistically, I think you got to give credit to those teams for taking down BYU. I mean, Kansas and Arizona State. Like, Kansas has played spoiler the last 2 weeks. Kansas is a major trap game right now. But that's what people forget sometimes in college football is just trap games. Look at Thursday night, Browns versus Steelers. Everybody was thinking, the Steelers are going to, walk in there and just blow out the Browns. That's a trap game. When you play an in-conference rival or in-division rival on the road, Actually, Kansas beat them at home. Kansas beat them. BYU was at home. But if you're going into a place like that and you're, playing a conference champion against a team that's got nothing to lose,
Yeah.
that's a trap game. What did I say with Indiana? Purdue is a trap game. They are 1-10. They've got nothing to lose.
Keep in mind they have not won a single Big Ten game this year.
Correct. They have nothing to lose. Absolutely nothing. Purdue could very easily beat them. Anyone can beat anybody at any time. And we've figured that out with Northern Illinois beating Notre Dame. If you take a team lightly and they walk in, they're ready to play, and they come out fighting, you got to still win a game.
I like the American in bowl games versus the quote-unquote powers because they take them down. Now, let's just look at this before we take a break. This is how the conference championships will be or already are set. In the college football, for the American Athletic, the championship's set. It was the only championship set prior to this week of the 9 conferences that will play a championship, because Pac-12 is not playing a championship this year unless you want to see Oregon State and Washington State. The only teams in the Pac-12.
Well, they are playing each other.
No, they are playing.
I mean, technically they are going to be playing
whatever
each other,
you want to call
doesn't really help.
whatever that is. But the American Athletic, Army will play Tulane in the championship.
Actually, they already played each other.
Yeah, well, they will play.
If you want to be sentimental, Oregon State won the Pac-12 this year, and they're 5-6.
That's so great. So in the American,
Washington State's 8-3.
What did I tell you all though? The logo never went away. The name never went away.
They'll be back next. They'll be back next year. I think they were talking about poaching some of the maybe combining with the Mountain West.
All the work, but I said well before. I said they ain't dead. I've watched enough soap opera stuff.
Don't they actually have teams going there next year?
Yeah, they do. They rebuilt it. They're rebuilding the entire.
Isn't Boise State and San Diego State aren't they all going to the Pac-12?
The Pac-12 will be a whole new baby. Basically, if you have the last name of state, you're allowed to be in. So in the American, Army will play Tulane for the championship. That's already done. That's set. In the ACC, it's not set, but SMU is the only undefeated team in the ACC in their first season in the ACC. Put them in the college football playoff. If they're not there tomorrow night, I'm going to have a lot to say on Wednesday morning. SMU, Clemson, Miami, all fighting to play in the ACC championship, which is in Charlotte at the Bank of America Stadium where the Panthers play. In the Big 12, we just talked about it. As of right now, Arizona State and Iowa State have the best shot of making it. If they lose, somebody loses, BYU's got a shot. Colorado needs a lot of things to happen, as I mentioned. In the Big 10, Oregon and Ohio State, if they win, they're both in because Ohio State owns the tiebreaker. Well, if Oregon stays undefeated, Oregon's in. If Ohio State wins, they win the tie. They have the tiebreaker over the closest team to them, which is Indiana, and they also beat Penn State. So as long as Ohio State wins, they're securing themselves because they're all 7-1 under Oregon. Ohio State, Indiana, Penn State, but Ohio State has the head-to-head. Conference USA, it looks like Jacksonville State is in, and it's either going to be Liberty, Western Kentucky, or San Jose State are all 5-2, so there's a tiebreaker there. In the MAC, Miami of Ohio, Ohio, Bowling Green, and Buffalo are all still alive, it looks like. In the Mountain West, Boise State would be playing UNLV. Well, let me see this one here. I want to make sure that UNLV is currently in second. But by the way, losing their quarterback in the middle of the season, insane. But they have not played. Have they played them? Let's see here. So, this is interesting. They haven't played Colorado this year, UNLV. So,
really?
Or Colorado State. So that puts them. Do they not play Colorado State in their conference? Really? Okay. Well, so UNLV has not played. So that makes things really interesting because there's no head-to-head. So in the Mountain West, UNLV and Colorado State are both tied. So one of them will play Boise in the Mountain West Championship.
I don't think it really matters.
Yeah.
Boise State's going to beat them anyway.
And then in the SEC, Texas is at the top at 6-1, and Georgia. Let me look at this here right now. So Georgia's got 6.
I still think it's weird not having the
This is
Big
really
Ten East, Big Ten West, SEC East,
Yeah.
SEC West. Like it's just weird to me.
It's weird seeing it in the SEC because the SEC held on to it for a while. Let me just take a look.
SEC held on to it forever.
Yeah,
I just remember for years, basically, like when Florida and Georgia were both good,
Yeah.
you beat Georgia, you're playing in the SEC championship game. It was the same thing for Michigan or Ohio State. Like if you beat each other, you're playing in the Big Ten championship against Wisconsin or whoever was in the West, because the West was usually inferior in the Big Ten. SEC, different story, because in the West you got LSU, you got Alabama, you got Ole Miss, you got Texas A&M. Like,
Yeah.
The East you still had some good teams, but not like in the West.
No, and when you look at and I mean that was the same thing with the Coastal Division of the ACC versus the Atlantic Division, but as John Swafford said, he's like, well, the Coastal Division used to be the better one. So he's like, it swings one way, it'll swing back, but having Florida State and Clemson on the same side was making the Atlantic a lot better. So looking at the SEC right now, Texas. So I'm looking at Tennessee is 5, and so Tennessee. They only have one more game. This is confusing to me. So Tennessee played.
Everybody's only got one more game.
I know, but I'm looking at this. It doesn't make sense to me. Okay.
Rivalry week.
All right. So that's 7. So then that'll be 8. So that's why it's confusing. So if Tennessee wins that one, they lost to Georgia. So Georgia has the tiebreaker. So if Tennessee wins over Vanderbilt and they're 6-2, Georgia's already finished.
Georgia's got to
up.
lose.
Yeah, Georgia's
done?
Georgia's done. Yeah, because they're playing Georgia Tech in the rivalry game. So Georgia.
Well.
So
they're done in conference.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter because they beat Tennessee.
Yeah, because a lot of the games rivalry week are non-conference.
So they beat Tennessee head to head. So Tennessee's got no shot of playing for the championship. So Texas will be in the championship game. I just want to make sure I'm right here with looking at these two teams here.
Who does Texas play? Texas plays Oklahoma, right?
So
they already played.
Yeah, so Texas is
playing.
Why
is that not a rivalry week game?
Okay, so here's the interesting thing. So Texas, let's see who Texas beat. So Texas lost to Georgia. So if Texas goes 6-2, if they lose to Texas, they
would need to lose to Texas A&M.
Here's where it gets interesting. So if Texas loses to Texas A&M, Texas A&M will be 6-2. Texas will be 6-2. Georgia will be 6-2. Georgia beat Texas, so Georgia would play Texas A&M in the SEC championship if Texas loses, because Tennessee can't play in it, and South Carolina can't play in it, and Alabama can't play in it. So,
wait, why can't Tennessee play in it?
Tennessee can't.
They didn't play.
They lost to Georgia, so they can't.
But why couldn't they be in over Texas or Texas A&M?
Because whoever wins that game is going to get in over them. Because if Tennessee wins and they go 6-2, I'll go back to their schedule. So let me see.
Tennessee would then be 6-2.
Did Texas play?
Let's just assume, for all intents and purposes, let's assume Texas loses to Texas A&M. Everybody's 6-2. Georgia's in.
Georgia will be in, yeah.
Because they beat Tennessee and they beat Texas. So they're in. Why? I mean, Texas didn't win any games against those teams.
So here it is.
Why would Tennessee automatically be out?
So if Texas A&M goes 6-2, I'm just trying to look at their record for a second here. If they go 6-2 and they beat Texas, so then it would have to go to, I think it can't go to head-to-head because Texas A&M didn't play Tennessee, so it would have to go to record against similar opponents.
Okay.
So then Texas A&M lost to South Carolina and Auburn. So Texas A&M lost to South Carolina and Auburn So now
Tennessee didn't play either one of those teams.
So then Tennessee, well, that sucks then. So then Tennessee played, that would have made it easier. So Tennessee played
Oklahoma, Arkansas, Florida,
okay.
Alabama.
So I'm going to take a look at these head-to-head right now.
Well, did Texas A&M play Alabama?
Texas A&M, I'll tell you right
They did not.
So let me find common opponents between the two of these. So they didn't. So
Here, you look at Texas A&M. I'll look at Tennessee.
Okay, how about this? So Texas A&M beat Arkansas, and
Tennessee lost to Arkansas.
Lost
so
to
there you go. So there you go.
So basically, Tennessee has a chance. Texas. So if Texas A&M beats Texas, Georgia
is in guaranteed.
Yeah. So if Texas A&M beats Texas A&M beats Texas, Georgia is secured. So Georgia wants a Texas A&M win, and if Texas A&M beats Texas, then they will leapfrog. It looks Tennessee and Texas. So there's a chance that Texas could not play for the SEC championship.
Yeah,
that's insane. I didn't look as deep as I did right now. I'm like, damn. That's insane. See, but that's how good. And here is where the ACC got punished for this. Like in the last couple of years, their conference was so good, like they were beating up on each other top to bottom. This is the SEC this year, folks. Please take this into account. The SEC, the best conference in football, nobody's undefeated. As I said before, think about these records. Texas.
That's a testament to how good the SEC is.
Right. Texas.
Look at all the ranked teams.
Right. And it should be a testament to the ACC in the past couple of years, but it wasn't. But it should have been. Texas 6-1, Georgia 6-2, Tennessee 5-2, Texas A&M 5-2, South Carolina above Alabama 5-3. Alabama 4-3 in the conference. Who would ever thunk that was a possibility?
They'll be 5-3 because they'll beat Auburn in the Iron Bowl.
So, and then you look at LSU 4-3, Missouri 4-3, Ole Miss 4-3, as good as they have been to play spoiler. Florida is now 4-4. Arkansas is 3-4. So Arkansas can end even. Vanderbilt can end even.
All but 3 teams have an above 500 record overall.
Yeah. So you look at the SEC right now, and you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 teams of the SEC will be playing in a bowl game this year, and it could be 14 when all is said and done.
Auburn might still get one because depending on if there's an odd number where they take a 5-7 team, which they've done before.
Right. They've taken a 4-8 Kansas State team when they ran out of spots. So
yeah.
We will take a step aside for a fast break. We're due for one. We will be back here. I have one more argument to make, and that is for the committee to stop leaving SMU out. They're at the top of their own conference.
I am with you on that.
At the top
They're going to win their conference.
They're the only undefeated team in the ACC.
I still think they're going to beat Clemson.
They are the only undefeated team in the ACC. They are physically leading their conference in their first year in the conference. By the way, SMU has not lost a conference game since November of 2022. They won at the end of the American season, and then they won all of their American games last year, including their American championship. And then they came into the ACC and have not lost a single game in the ACC in their first year in the ACC.
Who was their loss to?
SMU's only loss is to BYU by 3. 18.
Oh, okay, fair.
That's it. So, and that was a game where like neither team could get in the end zone. But SMU,
neither team. Was it literally all field goals?
It was the end of the game was absolutely insane. And SMU had a shot, but it was insane. By the way, I want to give a big time shout out to Syracuse, my hometown, for being in the top 6 of 17 ACC schools, because I don't think anybody had them there. So with that being said,
good job, Kyle McCord. And real quick before we go to break,
I think I had Syracuse.
Smell you, Ole Miss. Go Gators. Did you see was it?
What's gotten into the Gators in the last 3 weeks?
I think it was the Tennessee fans that when Ole Miss lost, the Tennessee fans started doing the Gator chomp because they knew by Florida beating Ole Miss, their chances of getting to the playoff were much better.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's absolutely crazy. It's so crazy.
I thought about going to that game, man.
Well, I'll tell you.
The last 2 years, I was gonna go to the LSU game. No, I was gonna go to the Tennessee game last year. They won. And not you, Siri. And then I was thinking about going to the LSU game this year and the Ole Miss game this year. They won both games. I should just start saying, hey, I'm going to go to this game, and they're just going to win.
Apparently, Scott.
All right, by the way, I'm going to try to go to the Florida State game. I'm probably not going to, but I'm going to try to, so they're going to win.
All I'm going to say is, apparently Scott Strickland should have put out that letter to Gator Nation a few weeks earlier, because since he put out that letter, Florida's been winning all these games. That he's going to keep Billy Napier.
Scott Strickland needs to be fired take Billy Napier with you.
Ever since he put out that thing that they're keeping Billy,
care.
They've been winning.
Get rid of him and take Billy Napier with you.
We will take a step aside for a fast break. When we come back, I will give my pitch to the committee on SMU right after this. Here's a message from Renee from Bryan's Landing, located on 6523 East Seneca Turnpike in Jamesville, New York. Open Tuesdays and Wednesdays for dinner, Thursday through Saturday for lunch and dinner, and Sundays for brunch.
It's a lot like the way that my mom and dad ran their restaurant. We have put in place a lot of people that are family to us, very similar to how my dad hired people that were family to him. And then the tradition I'm carrying on is a lot of the items that are on our menu are my dad's. And he taught our chefs how to recreate his dishes. So I think that Tommy McNerney, who our executive chef is, to him it is an art. And I think that when he does create a dish, it's not just about making the food taste delicious, which is definitely our priority, but it's an art to him, and it's almost like his canvas on a plate where he just wants the colors to look great, and people love it because he takes pride in that. And Bryan and I appreciate that. We want it to obviously look good and taste good. I will tell you, when we opened up, it was 6 weeks before COVID. And what was amazing was the community, our friends and family stepped up, and everybody did takeout. Everybody supported us. Our hearts were just so filled. So to Bryan and I, obviously our friends come all the time, and we just have repeat customers in Jamesville, and I think people going to our previous restaurant in Green Lakes are making the trip to come to Bryan's Landing to support us. And I mean, I think we have great food and a great atmosphere. So it's very, very important to us.
Head to Bryan's Landing, located on 6523 East Seneca Turnpike in Jamesville, New York, where memories have become recipes that are now meals to share with you. Tuesdays and Wednesdays for dinner, Thursday through Saturday for lunch and dinner, and on Sundays for brunch. And be sure to come out for live music Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Here is a special message from Brian Bruno, owner of Servomation Refreshments Incorporated.
I grew up in the family business, had the experience of working for a national food service company with thousands of employees, and as much as I enjoyed the experience I had, there's something about, owning my own company and being able to change the things I saw wrong with the industry firsthand, which is why I moved back to my hometown in Canastota, New York to launch Servomation. It was back in 2007. When we first started the business in 2007, really you didn't find any machines with credit card readers. There's a lack of variety in machines. You got stuck with basically whatever the vending company wanted to sell that day. There's a lot of inefficiencies in the business, and those were all things that we saw as opportunities, both from a customer level to improve and from an operating level to be more efficient. We've really been at the forefront of introducing retail technology into our space. We were doing self-checkout back in 2009 before it really became a national phenomenon. The whole point of it isn't to just improve the customer experience, it's to make it feel more like a retail environment where people don't have to be afraid of what they're buying behind glass. They don't have to be afraid of not being able to see the ingredients of the packages. It was an easy transaction from that standpoint. If we were to reinvent something, we wanted to make sure what we were making looked and felt more like a deli and not like something that you would traditionally see in a vending machine. I was tired of hearing for years the customers say the wheel of death because the vending machine would circle around with the same tuna salad in it. What we wanted to do was it really changed the perception of that food. So allowing customers to touch it, allowing customers to feel the weight of it, allow customers to see the freshness of it, and also the variety of it really helps them change the perception and ultimately the value of what we bring to them. The point of differentiation you have to make is either in value or the quality. And I think on both of those fronts, Servamation has really, in large part, changed that value system for employees. So they no longer have to worry about bringing their food from home or having to leave their desk during the day and rush out to get back in time for their break to end. We're bringing something that they can count on in their break room every day, and they know it's going to be there, they know it's going to be fresh, and they don't have to worry about it being sold out or something that they don't enjoy. We've also heavily invested in flavored water machines, so you can get a glass of water with a fresh piece of fruit in it, along with bean to cup coffee machines. So there's not a day that goes by we're not surprised when we get customers that call us and say, we didn't know you could do all this. We're really lucky to have a strong group of dedicated employees. Most of our employees have been with us since inception. They're family to us, and people like doing business with people they like and trust. And I think the same thing goes for employees. In a day and an age where there's a lot of corporations that just look at an employee as a number and don't get to know them, that's just not the way I was raised or how I like to do business. So we're a little old-fashioned. We like getting close to our employees. We like knowing how we can help them. We like knowing how we can improve their lives, adjust their schedules, whatever it may be to help improve their quality of life. And we think in the end that makes for a happier employee. We're fortunate enough to have really grown over the last several years, and from Pennsylvania to Massachusetts to Connecticut, we really do have a strong connection, even though we're not in the rooms every day with these employees. There's not one single employee that we feel like we don't know, and certainly we know they can call us at any time, and they're definitely treated as family to us. I wake up every single day really excited to surprise our customers in a good way. The one thing I can tell you is I think that every one of our employees and every one of our customers will continue to be at the forefront of every decision we make.
Find out how Servomation can help you and your business by going to servomation.com. In these unique times, there are those in our community that give us a sense of normalcy and positivity. Pizza Man on 50 Oswego Street in Baldwinsville has been here for you for over 35 years and is here now. Call 315-638-1234 or order online at pizzamanbville.com to bring those familiar tastes into your home. And remember to come see our monthly on-site broadcasts centered around the community and our Baldwinsville beats. Pizza Man in Baldwinsville. Any way you slice it, they are always here for you. Looking for your next ride? Look no further than Great Lakes Honda City, located on 7140 Henry Clay Boulevard in Liverpool, New York. Serving our community for decades, their new and pre-owned vast array of vehicles are available to you Monday through Saturday on site. To search from home, shop at GreatLakesHondaCity.com. Call 315-365-5576 to set up an appointment. That's 315-365-5576 for Great Lakes Honda City, 7140 Henry Clay Boulevard in Liverpool, New York. Great cars, great people, Great Lakes.
All right, you need to come out here and get yourself the Brooklyn Pickle. I was talking about this with one of my buddies. I was like, yo, there's no better sandwich in the state of New York than the Brooklyn Pickle. And now that I found out that they're going down to North Carolina, we are taking over your taste buds everywhere you are, wherever you're going to be. You need to get yourself out to the Brooklyn Pickle. Pinehurst, you just realized that you found yourself the best sandwich shop that you're ever going to have. This is a glorious moment. It's a blessing to your community. You're welcome. Brooklyn in the house, baby. Go over to the Brooklyn Pickle. You already know what it is.
You heard the man. Head to Brooklyn Pickle Pinehurst on 1788 Old Morgantown Road in Southern Pines, North Carolina.
Hi, this is Amy from Mother's Cupboard, home of the whole frittata. We are open daily 6 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. For takeout orders, call 315-432-0942 and tune in to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora for our monthly food challenge and try our Wake Up Call signature menu item available 7 days a week. Here at Mother's Cupboard, we are Central New York, and it's our honor to serve you.
Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory remind us that every day is worth celebrating at 201 7th North Street in Liverpool, New York. Open Monday through Saturday in-store and always online at maandpaspopcorn.com. Serving our Central New York community and beyond, order anywhere, anytime at maandpaspopcorn.com. Stop in to get a tin at Ma and Pa's on 201 7th North Street in Liverpool, New York to get your half-price refills for the rest of your life. Come to Ma and Pa's for your holiday gift giving for family, friends, employees, and clients. And remember, for fundraising and events, to call 315-450-6272. That's 315-450-6272. Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory. How corny are you?
This is Jimmer Sikowski, owner-operator of Chick-fil-A Cicero, 7916 Brewerton Road in Cicero, right in front of the Home Depot. I had a deep feeling that God wanted me to do something bigger with my life and to help people, help others. I kept putting Chick-fil-A in my life, and I realized as I was going through the franchise selection process that positively impacting the lives of others was really core to what we do here at Chick-fil-A. First of all, it starts with the food. The food is brought in fresh daily. We bring in local produce. We prepare to order in the kitchen. We hand bread our chicken. We hand spin our milkshakes. It's great food. It doesn't taste like fast food. I think the second thing is the way people feel when they come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. It's different. We try to treat people with intentional kindness here, which is very different and deeper than good customer service. And so I think it feels remarkable for most people to come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. And then lastly, the impact that we try to have in the community is very different. It's a big part of the expectation of every operator of a Chick-fil-A restaurant is that they're actively engaged in their community, they're a leader in the community, and they're making a difference. When they realize that what we're striving to do is to shine a little light in their life, that's a very, very different experience than you will have in any other quick service restaurant. And it's that remarkable experience that I think people will emotionally connect with.
And a welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports truly meets that thing called life. Appreciate you being here, hanging out with us on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. It is Thanksgiving week, and we are so happy to be here with you, DT and Murphy, and getting into the college football playoff. So let me go ahead and say this now. College Football Playoff Committee, you have made SMU, you put them in the top 14, you put them just out of it. I want to remind you of something. They play in the ACC. That used to matter. Now, I think that every conference, if it's a true college football playoff, I think every conference football champion should be in of their champion, or every championship within conference they should play, because that's what we do in the NCAA tournament. It's what seems to
literally
make
every other sport.
Right, baseball, and it makes a lot of sense. So, though I do think the real argument is the fact that the winner of the American, the ACC, the Big 12, the Big 10, Conference USA, the MAC, the Mountain West, as well as the SEC and the Sun Belt should all be playing for a championship. And then, once the Pac-12 gets their thing together, for them to be a part of it as well, that we should have it. We should have conference champions playing for a championship, because this year the MAC, the Sun Belt, Conference USA, not even talked about. Boise State was talked. And I also think this, and again, and this will go beyond the Big Ten for those of you that think I'm just scrutinizing the Big Ten. Boise State was talked about before the season started. Now, granted, Boise State has had a good season, but I do believe that what's pushed in the media at the beginning of the year, and it's pushed and pushed and pushed and snowball, those are the teams that I feel like come to be expected. They've already talked. The more you talk about it, because it's the same thing the ACC has spoken about. When the ACC was pushed down at the beginning of a season and people weren't really talking about it, or if they were talking about it, they weren't giving a lot of credence to the ACC. When the ACC started to prove itself, because that conversation that had started months before was so negative, it didn't really change anything. So even though the ACC did it in real game, it didn't matter because of the media push to overlook the ACC. And so in the case of the Big Ten, when you put them on such a high mountain, if they win their games against unranked teams or whoever, they're not going to come off. Boise State, in the beginning of the season, they were being argued in. Now, I want Boise State to be in, but I think it's unfortunate for Tulane and Army in the American who have had good seasons. I'm not going to sit here and argue that the Sun Belt or the MAC has someone great to put forward this year because of the amount of losses and this, that, and whatever. But the Mountain West and the American this year have a case. I would like that every conference champion gets in, but this year they have a case. With that being said, SMU is getting the American treatment still. They're in the ACC, yet they're not given enough in the College Football Playoff Committee's eyes. They're not doing well enough. Now, keep in mind, folks, undefeated teams in conferences, let me tell you how many undefeated teams there are in a conference. Army and Tulane are undefeated in the American. SMU is undefeated in the ACC. No one is undefeated in the Big 12. Oregon is undefeated in the Big 10. Jacksonville State is undefeated in Conference USA. So far that's 4. No one's undefeated in the MAC. In the Mountain West, Boise State is undefeated, so that's 5. The Pac-12 doesn't count this year. The SEC and the Sun Belt have none. So of 134 FBS schools, 5 are undefeated in their conference. On top of that, SMU is in their first season in a new conference. They won in the American, and some might say, well, that's easy, Dan. That's a cakewalk. Chump change. Well, now they're in the ACC. And I don't care what conference you switch to, it's really hard to go undefeated in a conference after going undefeated the year before in another conference. Was Oregon undefeated last year in the Pac-12? They're undefeated this year in the Big Ten.
I don't believe so.
But when you look at SMU...
I mean, it's hard in general to be undefeated in a new conference, regardless of what you were last year. But It's even more impressive what SMU is doing.
Right. It's hard to be undefeated in a conference because those teams see you the most. It is hard to be, and the SEC knows that. It's hard to be undefeated in a conference. It's hard to be undefeated in your first season in a conference. And it's almost dang near impossible historically to be undefeated in one conference and then be undefeated in a new conference in back-to-back years. SMU is 7-0 in the ACC. SMU is 10-1 overall. SMU's only loss is in a very low-scoring game to BYU where nobody could get into the end zone. And that was an undefeated BYU who went on to stay undefeated for a while after that. That was the third week of the season, by the way, when BYU wasn't even ranked at the time. BYU wasn't given respect at the time. 18-15. Now, they beat Nevada. They beat Houston Christian. Okay, those games, not big games. They lose to BYU by 3. They play TCU, who has been a darling of the Big 12 for a while. They beat TCU 66-42. Then they start ACC play.
What a game.
Yeah. Then they start ACC play. They blow out Florida State. They win at Louisville, which anybody will tell you, regardless of Louisville's record and ranking, playing Louisville in Louisville is one of the toughest games that I've seen Syracuse have to play over the years. playing Louisville in Louisville, they could be 2-9 or 9-2, doesn't matter. They could be ranked 10, 15, or 62, doesn't matter. So they beat Louisville at Louisville. That was a big game. They went to Stanford and blew them out by 30. They went to Duke and won that game 28-7 and held on. They beat Pitt
28-27.
28-27, yeah. 27. So they beat Pitt 48-25 back when Pitt was living in their undefeated world. They beat Pitt. And Pitt's gone on to lose ever since. Then they beat Boston College.
Pitt hasn't won since. Oh, boy.
No, they haven't. Then they beat Boston College by 10. And then they won at Virginia 33-7. Now, keep in mind, some people said Notre Dame's win over Virginia is a quality win. Okay. Well, SMU just beat Virginia.
And it is for SMU, too.
They just beat Virginia at Virginia in Charlottesville 33-7. They beat Virginia better than Notre Dame did. So, SMU, since losing to BYU, is on an 8-game winning streak. They will play Cal at home, and if they beat Cal, they will play in the ACC championship in their first season in the ACC. SMU, other teams that are leading, Texas leads their conference, and they've been projected as the winner of the SEC. Oregon leads their conference, they've been projected as the winner of the Big Ten. Boise State leads their conference, they've been projected as the winner of the Mountain West. The only projected winner that is wrong in the rankings has been Miami, who is third in the ACC.
Quite literally can't play in their championship game.
And here's the thing. Miami, when we talk about who gets unfair advantages, every year, Alabama, Ohio State, Notre Dame, the schools I was talking about, Michigan. This year, for whatever reason, Miami has been given a very high ranking. And they've held on to that high ranking. And when they lose, they stay in that high ranking. They're the one ACC team that has been regarded as the darling. SMU has been held out of the college football playoff.
Because it's the U.
Right. Again, looking at history and not at whatever. Miami, who I
don't think they're that good anyway.
I told you that Miami, in my opinion, has been, or it could be argued as, and I said this before they played Georgia Tech, which they lost. I said Miami, to me, looking at their schedule, played a very Big Ten schedule. What I mean by that is they played a lot of unranked teams. And Miami beat Florida on the road, unranked. Florida A&M, unranked. Ball State, who almost beat Notre Dame the year that they got in the college football playoff. Just want to remind people of that. Unranked. Beat South Florida at South Florida after South Florida held Alabama to a one-possession game until 7:33 left in that game. Miami played them the next week and blew them out. So that said something to me because I think South Florida is better than they get credit for. They're also bowl-bound for 2 years. The only 2 years that Alex Golesh has been a head coach, they're bowl-bound. So Virginia Tech, they beat them unranked. At Cal, unranked. At Louisville, unranked. Florida State, unranked. Duke, unranked. Lost to Georgia Tech, unranked on the road. Beat Wake Forest, unranked. So to me, Miami hasn't really been tested this year outside of the fact that when they blew out South Florida, I was like, damn. Like, to me, that was a game because South Florida has played Alabama in South Florida and at Alabama, and they've played them close in both games and had a hell of an effort this year until 7:33 left. And last year, they held them under 20, and I think it was a 17-9 game. So
I would give them credit for Cal and Louisville, too. Cal only because you got to travel cross country, and as we've seen in the NFL, that is not easy. So, you can give them. I would give them a little bit of credit for that one.
I give them credit for Cal. They had to come all the way back.
I give them credit for Louisville too. Yeah. Right, because Louisville, as we know, has been ranked off and on this year. They are not currently. They won't be at the end of the year, but it's not really. They're not a bad team by any means. They've been ranked at different times throughout the year. Georgia Tech has played spoiler a couple different times. We know that. Yeah. And they've been, not too bad this year.
No, I mean,
but again,
Miami.
I don't think Miami's all that good anyway. But what I want to know is why they are projecting Miami as the 4 seed when they can't play for the conference championship.
Yeah.
They're not going to win the conference because they literally can't. I want to see Syracuse beat the crap out of them. That'd be fun to watch for 2 reasons. 1, for your boys, and 2, because I think that would knock Miami completely out of the playoffs.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing here is if Miami beats Syracuse and they're 7-1, they didn't play SMU and they didn't play Clemson. So then that would have to, if everybody's 7-1, then we would have to look at common opponent. So if Miami ends, if they beat Syracuse and they're 7-1, so we say
that's assuming SMU loses to Cal, which they're not going to.
Right. But if that happened, then Miami has a win over Cal. And Clemson.
SMU would not.
And Clemson, just for argument's sake, I want to see what this says. Clemson
did not play Cal.
They didn't play Cal this year. So, and Clemson's already done because they're playing South Carolina this week. So, okay, but back to my SMU thing. SMU should be in the college football playoff. 1, they're leading the ACC. 2, they've led the ACC every week of the college football playoff rankings, which is now going into week 4. So they led in week 1, they led in week 2, they led in week 3, they led in week 4, which is going to be this week on Tuesday. They'll be telling us where they're putting them. SMU with Rhett Lashley. Listen, Chad Morris helped to get them out of the basement. The only team that's ever had the death penalty in football. And I would argue that from 1985 when
what did they get the death penalty for?
Broke rules, so they gave themselves the death penalty. So
they gave themselves the death penalty?
They took on the death penalty for a year.
Okay.
So SMU takes the death penalty from 85. I would argue that in 20 years plus, they didn't come back from having that 1 year of the death penalty. Then Chad Morris comes to town. He gets them to a winning record in a bowl game. He leaves for Arkansas. Again, the power poaching the American, the SEC poaching the American. He goes to Arkansas. Sonny Dykes steps in. Sonny Dykes keeps SMU good. Sonny Dykes plays for a national championship with TCU in his first couple seasons there. And now Rhett Lashley comes in, and he's been there for a few seasons, and he's been putting work in there. SMU has shown that different coach, still good. And yet they don't get that advantage, Michigan. They have won from one conference to the next. And they don't get that advantage, Oregon. They have...
Oregon is 11-0.
But what I'm saying...
You can't tell me that they're not the number one team in the country.
What I'm saying is going to another conference and being undefeated, bare minimum SMU should be 12 in the college football playoff. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying they're better than Oregon. I'm saying Oregon goes to a new conference, goes undefeated. SMU goes to a new conference, goes undefeated. And SMU's not in the college football playoff. That's wrong. That's wrong.
SMU should be in the college.
They should be, and that's wrong.
We definitely agree on that.
The argument I'm making is they should be in, not that they should be in over Oregon. Oregon 100%. Is the best team in the country. I think Texas is arguably the second best team.
I am going to tell you this right now. Don't be shocked if Ohio State beats Oregon with their second chance. Because Ohio State went on the road to the Pacific Northwest and lost by 1. Don't be shocked if they beat Oregon. And then they are the new number 1 team in the country going into the playoffs.
So I mean,
I'm just going to put that out there right now.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, we'll talk about this next week.
Yeah.
But don't be shocked if they beat Oregon in the championship game.
So I'll look at this and I will tell you this. In my opinion, going back to SMU should be in. SMU leads the ACC. They're the only undefeated.
They're going to win. I firmly believe they're going to win the ACC.
Yeah. They're the only undefeated team in the ACC.
Clemson's going to be tough for them, but I think they're going to beat
The
them.
thing I don't like about the situation with SMU is, again, because the committee moves pieces to where they want them to be, because of where they've put SMU at 13 and 14, because they've put them there, they have to win the ACC to get in. If they lose in the ACC championship
After this week,
they're
I
not
don't
gonna,
think so.
No, they won't. They'll be if they lose in the ACC championship, they won't let
I don't
them
know
in.
about that, dude.
They won't let them in.
Because
They already have
you
them
might
out
be
right
you
now
might be right.
leading the ACC.
You might be right, but with how many teams? There were 7 teams in the top 20 that lost this week. 7. Right? Indiana lost. Alabama lost. Ole Miss lost. BYU lost. Texas A&M lost. Colorado lost. And Army lost. All of those teams lost. Army's out. Colorado's out. Texas A&M's out. BYU, I think, could still get in if they win the Big 12, but as we said, they may not even have a chance to win the Big 12. I think the Big 12 is only going to get one team. The Big 12 is going to get whoever the champion is, because every team in that conference has 2 losses.
Well, that's how they treated them this year anyways.
Well, every team in the conference has 2 losses. You're not going to put a 3-loss team in there. Not from that conference. The teams that realistically I think will still have a chance of getting in from like 7 to 15. Tennessee probably still gets in. I hate to say it, but Miami's probably still going to get in. I do still think SMU can get in without winning the Big Ten or without winning the ACC.
They should,
Because if you look at it this way,
they won't.
Texas will play Georgia for the SEC championship, correct? I believe.
As of right now.
As of right now. Assuming they play each other. Let's say Texas beats them this time. I think that knocks Georgia out. So that's the spot that opens up there. Tennessee will stay in because they have 2 losses. Indiana probably still in 10-1. They're not going to play for the Big Ten championship, but whatever. Boise State will be your 4th conference champion. They'll probably be the 4 seed. Big 12 will be the 12 seed most likely. Clemson, if SMU beats Clemson, Clemson's out.
They have to be. But SMU should be.
If SMU loses to Clemson,
they should be in either way. SMU
I
should
think
be
they
in.
should be in either way, but just looking at how the things stack up, like you're not going to put Ole Miss back in.
Yeah. It'll be tough to see.
They would probably have to be the last team in. Because if you look at the teams that are below them and the teams that would now this is just looking at the AP poll. Obviously, this is going to be a little bit different when you have the actual college football playoff bracket. But just looking at the AP poll, if SMU loses to Clemson, Clemson will leapfrog SMU. Let's say that knocks SMU down to 11. Actually, no, let's just say they trade places. Clemson goes to 9, SMU goes to 12. I don't know. I mean, you're between Indiana and SMU at that point.
And they're going to pick Indiana because they've fed the narrative.
I would be
narratives
okay with Indiana over SMU, but I would not be okay with Alabama over SMU.
It's but it's the reality of narrative.
Because it would not shock me if they were to put in a team like Alabama over both of them.
But they feed the narrative.
But I hope. But
the narrative
honestly, I don't think it's going to matter.
Fed on Indiana. That's the narrative. It must be nice to play a schedule where you don't play really any ranked teams. You win one ranked game and you don't play for your championship and you still get to get in. It must be nice. That is the Big Ten. That's what I'm talking. This is another thing that states my argument. That is the Big Ten advantage. Because SMU playing in their championship game, if they lose in the ACC championship, they'll say, well, they had 2 losses and we didn't have them as high before and we can't do. Why Miami is 5 spots?
I don't think it's going to matter
They're
anyway.
5 spots above them. Miami is 5 spots above SMU and Miami is 2 spots below them in the conference.
In the AP poll, they're back to back right now. The
Right.
new AP poll.
But to be in the
Miami's 8, SMU's 9.
To going in the game last week, college football last week going in regarded the committee of the college football playoff regarded Miami as 5 spots above SMU. They have kept Miami above SMU every single week of the college football playoff rankings. They think Miami is better than SMU.
They've played a similar schedule.
Even though SMU is in a place right now where SMU has led. And the argument for SMU is clear. Win the games in front of you, they have. Be in the quote-unquote power conference because that matters to the college football playoff, they are. Win all your games, they have. Be undefeated, they have. Play for a championship, they will.
Well, I'll tell you right now,
So
if Miami loses to Syracuse, they are definitely out.
well,
Without a doubt.
Well, and the thing, I mean, that's because Syracuse has been not regarded as much of it.
Syracuse would then be 9
They've
and
been like
3.
26 this year, 26 to 29. They've been ranked this year. They haven't been ranked in the top 25. Keep in mind, Syracuse has something that they can say over Ohio State. And well, let me think about this. Yeah, they can. They can say, oh no, they can't. Not over Ohio State anymore. They can say it over Indiana. They beat 2 ranked teams. Indiana's beaten 1. They can also say that and Indiana's was lower, and then they can also say Syracuse can claim.
That's if they win this game, you're saying?
Yeah. Well, Syracuse can claim to fame. No, they've already won against 2 top 25 ranked teams, so they're above Penn State and they're above Indiana in those regards. So, looking at right now, Clemson is in a place where if Miami loses, they're in good footing. If Miami wins, then this is where we could see it all shake out with, if Indiana,
Miami loses, they need to be out.
But
I would not put Miami in the playoff if they lose to Syracuse.
The issue with the committee is if Miami wins and they go into the ACC championship and they beat SMU, the committee can look there and say, "We told you so."
Well, they've got they need.
They would also have 2 losses.
Clemson to lose. Clemson's.
Well, actually, they don't need anything.
Clemson could very easily lose to South Carolina,
but they don't need anything from Clemson because that game's not in the ACC.
Oh, it's true. That's true.
They need nothing from. So Clemson.
Well, if Clemson loses to South Carolina, they would then have 3 losses. That pretty much takes them out of the playoff conversation unless they win the ACC. If they were to win the ACC with 3 losses, then yes, they are still in.
Right.
But if they don't win the ACC, then they're out no matter what.
If Clemson has 3 losses and they win the ACC championship, if that world was to happen, they could be bumped out of the top 4. So
yeah, most likely.
And they would put the Big 12 in the top 4 with Boise State.
Yeah, maybe, probably.
Because
that'd be a really weak top 4.
Because they're going to regard the top 4 because for whatever reason, you have to keep in mind again, narratives.
Although
it's narratives.
Didn't I say earlier in the year? Didn't I say earlier in the year though that Boise State could very easily make a run in a national championship this year?
You may have.
I'm pretty sure I said that at one point this year.
Well, and they can. And they should be.
Yeah, they played Oregon. They lost to Oregon by 3. That is, I think that's saying something about how good they are.
And they're not shying away
from it. They lost
anybody.
to Oregon by 3, and let's see.
They're not shying away from
double-digit win, blowout, double-digit win, blowout, close game, blowout, close game, blowout, close game. They got Oregon State this week, who isn't very good, and then you got the Mountain West Championship. No idea who they're playing yet. In that scenario, Boise State will be the 3 seed.
But I would tell you this, to your point before, if blowouts matter, then Indiana should be out. If how brutally you beat a team matters, then Indiana should be out.
Blowout. Double-digit win, blowout, double-digit win, blowout, beat Michigan by 5, got blown out.
Yeah, and beating Michigan by 5, that's not good. That's not good in your case.
Well, they've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 double-digit wins that I wouldn't necessarily classify as blowouts.
But they have a blowout loss.
Yeah,
They have a blowout
but
loss
they have a lot of blowout wins.
against unranked teams. They have a blowout loss against a good team.
Fair.
They have no wins over ranked
Don't
teams.
get me wrong.
except
Do
for
I think
Illinois.
Indiana should be in now? Probably not.
No,
But
shouldn't be.
they're going to be. You know they're going to be.
They shouldn't be because
Going
then you
having
gotta have
one
why
loss
you gotta
in the
have
Big
four?
Ten.
Why do you have to have
Having
four
one
Big
loss
Ten
in the Big
schools?
Ten is still not easy to do.
But the thing is why? Well, it seems pretty easy to do. Ohio State and Michigan do it pretty much every year. But why have 4? You want a third of the college football playoff to come from the Big Ten. Ohio State's claim to fame, they beat Indiana, who beat one ranked team. They beat Penn State, who beat one ranked team. And they almost beat Oregon, but they didn't. So Ohio State's case, that's not a good case to me. To be number 2 in the country, absolutely not. To be in, fine. But to be number 2 in the country, no. Okay? And again, what wins did they have out of conference? 0 that were against ranked teams. So then you look at Penn State and you go, okay, what did Penn State do? They beat one ranked team. They're 4th in the country? Really? Who else did they play? Then you look at Indiana. They got blown out in a ranked game, and then they beat Illinois, who's 25th out of 25 in the nation. So Indiana, again, what have they done? The only team of the Big Ten that I regard as an actual threat to win a national championship this year is Oregon. Ohio State, they can win a game or two.
But you can make the same argument for Oregon. Their only real quality win is Ohio State.
But I look at Oregon and I say to myself, again, they came from a totally different conference, playing totally different
Boise
teams.
State too.
And then they came in here they came into the Big Ten, and they actually gave the Big Ten a threat. Because now Ohio State, Michigan, and the rest of the conference can't run away from Oregon and play them once every, Haley's Comet, which is, I believe, 71 years. But when you look at Oregon has been a good team regardless of conference. And Oregon actually plays schedule, like they'll go play people. Ohio State doesn't play anybody. Michigan finally played somebody and they got their butt handed to them. Penn State has proven that no matter how high you rank them, they're kind of almost there, but they're not there. But I will say this to people, if you let 4 Big Ten teams in, and then you go, Dan, look, there's a Big Ten team in the championship. Well, they had a 33% chance shot of getting there. They had more than that. They had more than 25%. Right. So you look at
33%. No, you're right.
They had a 33% chance. They had a third of the college football playoff to get in. Must be nice. It must be nice. If you got more balls in the lottery, you got a better chance of winning the lottery.
I mean, I firmly believe it should only be 3, but that's
if you want to put in Penn State, I will say Penn State has looked better. They're better to me than I've seen them in some of their years.
If they play that game against Ohio State at night, they win that game.
But I look at Penn State and I say, okay, Penn State, all right, okay. I look at Ohio State and I say, okay, I consider Oregon arguably be the best team in the country, and you played them 32-31. And then I look at Oregon, so Indiana would be left out this year. But when I look at the rest of this, I say, okay, if Texas holds strong, then Texas goes in. But here's the thing with anybody in the SEC.
I just don't think Texas is going to win the SEC. I don't think they're going to beat Georgia twice.
But here's the thing. Anybody in the SEC.
Actually, no, Georgia would have to beat them twice.
Anybody in the SEC that's not named Texas would have 3 losses if they lose to Texas. Mm-hmm. So the question becomes, if Texas wins out, if they beat Texas A&M and they beat Georgia in the championship,
the only team you could put in possibly is Georgia.
Then you look at Georgia's going to be 9-3, or they'll be.
That's the only team you could put in.
Georgia
because
will be.
Their losses would be to Texas.
They'll be 10-3.
Lost to the SEC. Who they would then lose to in the SEC championship. Alabama and Ole Miss. I would argue Georgia in over Indiana. I wouldn't argue them in over SMU, but I don't think it would matter because I think both would get in anyway. I think Georgia's in regardless. Honestly,
Here's the thing, though.
they're the only 3-loss team that I would consider
If Georgia goes,
because all 3 of their losses are to really good teams, and they beat the SEC champion.
here's the thing, though. If Georgia goes in, then and you take another SEC team, Ole Miss goes in over Alabama.
Yes,
Because
they should.
Because Ole Miss beat Georgia and Ole Miss beat Oklahoma, who beat Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
So Ole Miss
I
would
put Ole Miss in over Alabama 100%.
So Ole Miss would leapfrog. To some people, Ole Miss has been the most dangerous team in the SEC this season. When you look at
Not on Saturday.
no, they did not play a good game. But when you look at right now, if things hold true, then Oregon stays 1. If Texas wins the SEC championship and beats Texas
They'll be
A&M, they need to be 2 and stop with this BS with Ohio State being 2 just because you always
Ohio
put them
State
2
wouldn't be
every
2
year.
because they would have lost the Big Ten championship
Right.
game.
Well, they lost to Oregon and they put them 2 over Texas for how many weeks now? So
But
they're
Ohio
not better
State
than
would have
Texas.
2 losses at that point.
There's no way in hell that Ohio State is better than the leader of the SEC.
I'm not saying they are, but if
I'm saying the
if you're
committee's
saying
already
this is
made
the
it
commit-
so. They've made it so.
But if this happens after are you saying as of next week or as of after conference championship week?
I'm saying
Because if it's after the conference championship games and Oregon beats Ohio State again,
then they have to be down.
yes.
But are they
They will
going to
be.
how far are they going to go? 5, probably 5. Because that's what they do with Ohio State. They have to protect Ohio State at all costs. They'll send Boise State to go play Ohio State. So now if this happens the way that it does and it holds true, Oregon's 1, Texas is 2. Then depending on what the heck happens, let's say if SMU wins the ACC, then SMU needs to be 3. And then Boise State should be 4. And then whatever you want to do with the Big 12, you do with the Big 12. They're going to let Notre Dame in because it's already been proven when they opened up Pandora's box a few years ago that if Notre Dame plays literally anybody and goes 11-1 or 12-0, they're going to be considered. And if they were considered with 4, they're going to be considered with 12. So then Notre Dame goes in because of the Notre Dame rule. And then you look at Georgia. You look at how Miami finishes. If Miami beats Syracuse and plays in the ACC championship and loses to SMU, because they've argued Miami above SMU, they'll argue that Miami got into. I think the only way the ACC gets 2 schools in is if Miami plays in the ACC championship, SMU wins the ACC championship. That's the only way to get 2 in. Because SMU doesn't get the respect that they deserve. Miami gets the respect that they don't necessarily deserve right now. And if they both play for a championship and SMU beats Miami, and let's say it's a close game, then they're going to put them both in. But I think if it flips and Miami beats SMU, they'll find a way to argue SMU out and they'll put Alabama in. So SMU's got to win out, which is really unfortunate because it's how they were treated in the American and it got them nothing. And it's how they're being treated in the ACC, which will hopefully get them the 3 seed. And then they have to figure out what they're going to do with the rest of it. If Miami plays in the ACC championship, and they beat Syracuse before that, I think they get in. And then I'm going to argue Ole Miss. And I'm not going to argue a 3-loss Tulane. I'm not going to argue a BYU team that doesn't play for the championship. I'm not going to argue a 3-loss Texas A&M unless they beat Texas. If Texas A&M beats Texas, then we have a different world to talk about. But in the best scenario for Miami and SMU to both get in is what I said, is for Oregon to win, for Texas to win, and for SMU and Miami to play for the ACC championship. That's the best case scenario for the ACC, which is really, really unfortunate because of the fact that for some odd reason, the ACC in the last 3 years has fallen out of favor with like every committee. And I don't know why. And it's the same with basketball. And I don't know why that either. Because they have half the teams that the Big Ten has in the NCAA tournament, and they go farther than the Big Ten. You give them 5
Yeah.
or 4. The Big Ten has 9 or 10, and they outperform the Big Ten year in and year out for how many years? 2 years now, at least. So, I mean, I don't know what it is with the ACC. I don't know why people are the way they are with them. But unfortunately, in order for SMU and Miami to both make it, SMU's got to win. Miami's got to win. They got to play each other, and SMU's got to beat them.
Yeah. I mean, I still think SMU can get in if they don't beat Miami, if that's the case. But I mean, we'll see. I still think Georgia's going to end up beating Texas. So I think that's going to put a wrench into things. I mean, they've done it before. I think they're going to do it again. But, yeah, I mean, we'll see where things go. I do think that the Big Ten should only get 3. I think the SEC is only going to get 2 if they're lucky. If Georgia wins, they get 2. If Georgia loses, they probably still get 2, but then you can argue maybe a third. But that's so we got 3 Big Ten then. We got, let's say, 2 SEC, so that's 5. You've got, we want SMU. Let's just say SMU and Miami, so that's 7. We've got whoever the Big 12 champion is, that would be 8. We got Boise State would be 9. Notre Dame would be 10. Oh, wait a minute. The SEC is going to get 3 because of Tennessee, so that's 11. And then who the heck's your 12th team? Because we just figured that out. So we said Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, Georgia, Tennessee, SMU, and Miami. Boise State. Whoever the Big 12 champion is. And then we're missing one.
I'm looking at this right now. So,
if that's the case, and we are missing one, it's either going to be Indiana or Alabama.
So if
or Ole Miss.
If the SEC gets 3, so I'm going to have the SEC, Texas, Georgia, Ole Miss. I'm going to have the ACC, SMU, Miami for the argument that I had just now. The Big Ten, I'm going to say Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State. So the ACC gets 2, the SEC gets 3, the Big Ten gets 3. So that is 8. The Big 12 gets 1. Mountain West gets Boise, so that's 1. The American, unfortunately, is probably going to get left out. Conference USA is going to get left out. Sun Belt is going to get left out. The MAC is going to get left out. The Pac-12, which exists but kind of doesn't right now, they're going to get left out. So I'm looking at this right now. So that's 2, that's 8, that's okay. So 1, 2, 4, 10, 13. Okay, so I messed this up somehow. Oh, no, I didn't. Did I mess this up? Let me see here. 6, 7, 8, 9. No, I didn't. Okay, so I need 2 more. So I have the ACC with 2. They're not going to get more than 2. I got the Big 12 with 1, the Mountain West with 1. So the SEC and the Big 10, the SEC has 3, Texas, Georgia, Ole Miss. The Big 10 has Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State. So in my world, they can get Tennessee in for the SEC, and then Indiana or Alabama. So then that would give the Big 10 4, the SEC 4, so that's 8. And then the ACC would have 2, the Big 12 would have 1, the Mountain West would have 1. So the SEC and the Big 10 could each get 4. But I would, if it comes down to Indiana, Alabama, I would rather see Alabama. And at the same time, I would rather see Alabama head to head. I mean, Alabama playing Indiana, I'm going to pick Alabama. But the thing that concerns me is that Oklahoma. See, but that's the SEC though. Oklahoma beat Alabama, but Indiana is not playing the games that Alabama's playing. Like that, the three losses in 3 losses.
If they want to put the best team in, then it would be Alabama.
Yeah, like I mean, if you look at this and you say 3 losses in the SEC versus 1 blowout loss in the Big Ten, the SEC's got the gauntlet. And that again that's the argument between the Big Ten and the SEC. The Big Ten, you're playing a bunch of unranked teams. In the SEC, you're playing like 6, 7 ranked teams are playing in that. Look at South Carolina. Look at what South Carolina has done, what Florida has done recently. Look at what Vanderbilt did this year, for goodness sakes. They never won at Alabama, they never won at Auburn, and they beat Alabama same year. Missouri was considered a top 6 team. They've fallen down, still in the top 25. But look at Kentucky. Look at how well they played against Georgia. So the reality of it all is the SEC.
I mean, if you want to be, call me biased, but the last 5 weeks, look at the Gators.
Right. I mean, there's no way they're going to let them in.
Outside of the Texas game.
Yeah. There's no way they get in.
I think they beat Georgia if Lagway doesn't get hurt.
That was a good game.
Who else they play? Let's see. That was a great game. I think they would have won that game had he not gotten hurt. And thank God he's back because he played great against Ole Miss and LSU. Yeah, we had our backup against Texas, so we got blown out. But realistically, everything really started getting back on the right track for them when they played Mississippi State.
Yeah.
They blow out Mississippi. They beat Mississippi State by 17.
Yeah.
Then they beat UCF, which I was so happy they beat UCF. I was sick and tired of hearing that UCF was the best team in Florida. I was so glad we beat them. They play Tennessee tough. They lose in overtime. That was disappointing, but that was a really good game that they played. They beat Kentucky by 28. And then they lose to Georgia by 14, but if you watch the game, the score does not reflect how the game was. When Lagway got hurt, that is when things took a turn for the worse.
Yeah.
Texas, he didn't play, got hurt, they got blown out. They beat LSU, then they beat Ole Miss. I mean, I'm not for a second going to try and sit here and say that they're one of the 12 best teams in college football because they're not. But they've beaten some good teams. If any of you look from the beginning of the year, they had a gauntlet of a schedule. Listen to this schedule that they had to play this year. I'm going to count how many ranked teams that they played, just separate. Miami, Samford, Texas A&M, who is now ranked, Mississippi State, UCF, Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, Florida State. That's 7 ranked teams. And then, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 top 10 teams.
Yeah.
They could have gotten in with 4 losses. And that sounds crazy, but if they won let's just say they would have beaten Miami and Texas A&M. They would now have, actually no, had they beaten Miami and Texas A&M, they would only have 3 losses. So they would have 3 losses. They win those 2 games, they'd be in. Because a close loss to Georgia, a big win over Ole Miss and LSU, that would be a 3-loss team I'd put in the playoff. But they're not going to be because they're a 5-loss team. But, that's besides the point.
So I want to make a note of this, though. I forgot Notre Dame. So
who are we kicking out then?
So it's between Tennessee, Alabama, and Indiana. I love you all to pieces, everyone Tennessee all around the country. But if it comes down to those 3,
Tennessee's in.
I honestly could see them putting Alabama at 12.
No way.
No
way.
I really could.
No
Let's be
way.
real. Let's be real. We talk about the Big Ten having an unfair advantage. Alabama has it too.
There's just no way.
If it's between Alabama and Tennessee.
Tennessee beat them head to head. How could you put them in?
All I'm saying is they're going to make the argument. I'm just telling
Tennessee
you.
won
I'm not telling you it's my argument, Murph. I didn't say
there's no way they could put them in.
I didn't say it was my argument. I'm saying if there's one more spot and Alabama's on the line, you know damn well that people
They're
are going to
try, but if Tennessee's the team they're up against, you can't put them in over Tennessee.
In my opinion,
they set the precedent last year when they put in Texas and Alabama, because Alabama beat Texas head to head. You had to put them in if that was the case.
So this is how
Tennessee beat Alabama head to head.
This is how I look at it. Okay, I'm telling you that they're going to argue Alabama because you should know by now that they're going to argue Alabama.
I know they are, but
So,
this is.
I'm telling
each other.
I'm telling you what they're going to argue. That's all I'm saying.
If they didn't play each other, then okay.
I'm telling you.
But the fact that they played each other and Tennessee won, that's your argument. The argument's over.
Now, we look.
I'm all about head-to-head matchups.
Yes, I am too.
They beat them head-to-head.
I am too, and that's why I think people sounded idiotic when they said Cincinnati shouldn't get in over Notre Dame in 2021. But here's how it breaks down. So Tennessee's losses are to Arkansas and to Georgia, and they beat
Arkansas is not a great loss.
I'll give
them that. But.
They lost 19-14. And they beat Alabama by a touchdown, and they beat them at home in Tennessee. So, if they let in Notre Dame, which if Notre Dame goes 11-1, they'll get in. Blah. So they go in. So if Notre Dame goes in, must be nice. All I'm saying to Notre Dame is must be nice because we've argued for over an hour about what the strength of a conference, and this team's not even in one. And if they go 11-1, they're considered awesome. Guess what? Army wasn't in a conference last year. If they went at 11-1, people wouldn't even have known about it. So Army would be out here in this case in Tulane, which is very sad to me. But Notre Dame goes in, and not because I've covered the American since its institution, but because I respect both of these teams, and I think that Army and Tulane should be playing for something in the championship, my opinion. So when we look at if SMU and Miami get in, Texas, Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee get in, which I have on my sheet. Oregon, Ohio State.
Why would Ole Miss get in?
I'm putting Ole Miss. If I'm putting Ole Miss in with Texas, Georgia,
I would
Tennessee,
put Indiana in over Ole Miss.
Head to head, I would put Ole Miss all day.
Head to head, sure, but in terms of
that's what they're going to look at. They're going to look at SEC Big Ten.
I would take Ole Miss over Indiana all day, but at the same time, one loss versus three.
One loss versus
if
three.
Ole Miss had two losses, sure.
Right.
But 3 losses, I'm putting
play?
Indiana in.
Who did they play?
I'm still putting Indiana in that scenario.
Who did they play?
In that scenario,
how many top 25 wins do each have?
It doesn't matter.
It does matter. It absolutely matters. If Ole Miss and Indiana are fighting with each other to get in, it absolutely matters how many wins they have against top 25.
But Ole Miss lost to a couple of teams that they shouldn't have lost to.
No better than the American Athletic for losing to all unranked or beating all unranked, getting blown out by Ohio State, which Cincinnati did when they were in the American, and then
Ole Miss lost to 3 teams that they should not have lost to. Yes, they beat Georgia.
They beat Georgia,
but they should not have lost to LSU. They should not have lost to Florida, and they definitely shouldn't have lost to Kentucky.
That's fine.
I'm putting Indiana in that scenario. Would Ole Miss beat them head to head? I do believe that they would.
Well, that should be part of the test.
But at the same time, 1 loss versus 3, the 1 loss team has to get in.
Okay. So then in that case, undefeated Army, why are they going to be out? Or I'm sorry, 1 loss Army, why should they be out?
Because I don't think they're going to have 1 loss. I think they're going to have 2.
Well, if they have 1,
I think they're going to lose to Tulane.
We'll see. But if we look at this game, or we look at the SEC, so for argument's sake, I'm going to say Texas, Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee. Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State for the Big Ten. The Big 12, whoever wins, let's just say Arizona State for giggles. And in the Mountain West, and for giggles, I don't mean that I'm actually laughing that they can win. I picked Arizona State to win this past week. I'm just saying for blanks and giggles, it's a term if you don't know that, folks. Arizona State, Boise State. So now I'm going to give you my 12. Oregon is 1. If they win the Big Ten, Oregon is 1. Texas wins the SEC, they are 2. Then I'm going to put, if SMU wins the ACC, 3. I'm going to put Boise State winning the Mountain West and put Boise State 4.
Fair.
Then I'm going to go Madonna mia. Now I'm going to...
I'd probably go Penn State over Notre Dame at 5.
So if Penn State well, let me think here. Let me think here for a second, because it's between two teams for me.
I'd probably go Penn State, then Notre Dame.
If I look at, so if Ohio State has 2 losses and Penn State has 1 loss, because they're not going to play in the championship game.
I'd probably go Penn State, Notre Dame, Ohio State, in that order.
So I can see putting Penn State at 5 if they only have 1 loss. So I'll put them at 5. If Notre Dame is 11-1, they'll be 6. They're 6 right now. And then Ohio State would have 2 losses.
I think them at 7's fine.
So if they have 2 losses, Georgia
because they would have 2 losses.
Georgia would have 3 losses.
Tennessee would have 2. Miami would have 2.
Okay. So based on what I think the committee is going to do, so I'm going to have Oregon 1, Texas 2, SMU 3, Boise 4, Penn State 5, Notre Dame 6. I'll agree with you, Ohio State 7. Okay.
Now, Tennessee would be next.
So, well, Tennessee would have how many losses too?
2.
And Tennessee against Georgia. Tennessee lost.
I wouldn't give Georgia a home game.
They lost to Georgia head-to-head, so
I still wouldn't give Georgia a home game though. They did lose head-to-head, but they only got 2 losses. Georgia's got 3. I wouldn't want to give Georgia a home game.
Well, if I'm looking at this,
I would give Georgia the. So who would? What would be the?
That would be that would be the argument though, because that would be
the 7-8. Is it the 7-8 matchup that would be the home away, or was it 8-9?
8-9. No, it's it's 5 versus 12, 6 versus 11,
7 versus 10,
7 versus 10, and 8
I would
versus
put
9.
Georgia at 9.
But I
wouldn't give them a home game.
Here's the thing. Georgia would argue that they beat Tennessee head to head.
Fair, but they're going to play each other.
They would say they would say that but they would say
Tennessee would be 8.
They would
Georgia
say we
would be
deserve
9.
the home game because we played them head to head. They would say Tennessee lost to Arkansas and lost to us. And then Georgia would turn around and say we lost to Texas, who won the SEC championship. In this argument, they would say we lost to Texas, who won the SEC and is one of the top 2 teams in the country, who they also beat head-to-head. And they would say their other losses are to Ole Miss and Alabama, who are both ranked teams. So Georgia would have, in my opinion, they would have more of an argument because they beat Tennessee and they didn't lose to an unranked team.
I think the committee just couldn't. I don't think they could stomach giving a 3-loss team a home game.
Oh, I think if they can stomach putting in 4 Big Ten teams,
I don't think they would do it. I think Tennessee, Georgia 8-9 would be the case. It's just a matter of which is which.
Yeah.
I personally would put Tennessee at 8, only being 2 losses. I wouldn't want to give Georgia a home game. So
you may not want to give it to them, but if they played for the championship.
So then Georgia would be 9. Do you put Arizona State just at 12 and just leave them?
So I'm going to put. Okay, let me do this. I'm going to put Georgia.
Because then you still got Miami.
Yeah. I'm going to put Georgia at 8. I'm going to put Tennessee at 9 because of the argument that they can make. Then I'm going to put. Okay, let me think about this. So then I'm going to put Miami.
I like Miami at 10.
I think put Miami at 10, who's going to give them Ohio State. I'm okay with that. And then I'm going to put Ole Miss 11. I'm going to put Arizona State at 12.
That's fair. I think that's a good play. I think it's a good bracket.
Because
Penn State would get to play at Iowa State or Arizona State, who I think they'd beat. Honestly, Arizona State coming to Beaver Stadium, there's no way. There's no way Penn State loses that game. Notre Dame would then play Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss beats them.
Yeah.
Then you've got 7-10 is Ohio State and Miami.
That's a good game.
Ohio State wins that game. I think Ohio State wins that game.
That's a good game.
And then 8-9 Georgia Tennessee. I think whichever team is at home wins that game. In this case, you put Georgia at home. Mm-hmm. So let's say Georgia wins that game. So now you've got. I don't know if you updated that, if you made those changes at all or anything, but
Yeah, they're all here.
okay. So then we have one versus. No, it does not reseed, correct?
No.
Okay, so now you would have 1 versus 8.
Yep.
So we said Georgia.
So if Georgia wins that game.
Let's say it's Georgia.
So then Georgia plays Oregon.
If I'm Oregon, I do not want to see Georgia.
No, nobody wants to see
because I
Georgia.
think Georgia can beat them.
Listen, they have proven that when Georgia and Alabama get into the playoff, you don't want to see either one of them.
However, I would pick Oregon in this scenario. So I would go with Oregon. Is that right?
Texas would hold on. I want to make sure. I'm bringing up the bracket right now. I had it up. Hold on one second. Let me bring this up.
Can you make like mock brackets?
I can make them on the thing right now. But give me 1 second. I want to see. Oh my goodness! Just give me the bracket. So why is that not giving me the bracket? Hold on 1 second.
I think Texas would then play Ole Miss.
So if we have the format, because I had it up when we just did a show at Pizza Man this past Thursday. We just did the bracket, and we put. Oh, here it is. Is this it? There we go. Okay. All right. So the 5-12 plays the 4, the 8-9 plays the 1, the 6-11 plays the 3, the 2 plays the 7-10.
So the 6.
Texas.
No, they would play Ole Miss.
Texas would play the winner of Miami and Ohio State. If Texas is 2. They play the 7th.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, that makes sense.
They play the
That's
7th.
right. That's right. So we said that would be Ohio State. I'd probably take Texas in that scenario.
So I'm gonna hold on. Let me bring.
So let's say it's Texas there.
I'm gonna bring something up here. I'm gonna write it up on the board here. Give me 1 second. So I'm gonna do a little bracket here for y'all really quick. So we're gonna have. My goodness. So we will have the 5-12. Penn State. Oh, we didn't do that one. Oh, yes, we did. So Penn State, Arizona State. So we're going to have Penn State. Moving on. And Penn State would play. They're the 5-12. So the 5-12 would play the number 4 seed. So they would play Boise. Penn State, Boise State would play up against each other. Then we're going to have the...
That would be a really good game.
6-11, I agree. 6-11 would be... Where's my 6? Notre Dame and Ole Miss. So Notre Dame and Ole Miss, if we have Ole Miss, then Notre Dame in the 6-11. Notre Dame, Ole Miss. So Ole Miss, if we have them winning that one, the 6-11 will play the 3 seed. So that 3 seed is going to be SMU versus Ole Miss.
Sorry, SMU. I'm taking Ole Miss all day in that game.
So you got SMU and Ole Miss. Then I'm going to go ahead and we have Oregon, the 1 seed.
That one we already did.
Which
Oregon would play Georgia.
Oregon would play the 8-9, and if we have Georgia winning, put Georgia there. And then Texas is going to be playing the winner of the 7-10. And that's going to be Miami and Ohio State. And if that's Ohio State.
And we said Ohio State.
So this is your final 8.
Yeah. So if we did it like this, I think we already said Oregon, we already said Texas. I would take Ole Miss over SMU. Sorry, SMU, but I would just do it. Penn State, Boise State would be a really difficult game to pick.
Boise. Yeah, running back.
Yeah. I mean, Penn State's got a good defense. It would just be a matter of if they can contain him. If they can contain him, they'll win the game. But if they can't and he runs all over them, it's going to be a blowout.
Who has contained him this year?
Nobody.
Okay. So if we
I think Penn State's good up front though, so I mean that's the only one. I'm okay with going Boise State there.
So let's go Boise.
I would
here.
root for Penn State, but
Yeah.
I would be okay with Boise State.
Let's go Boise. Let's say that Ole Miss wins this one because they could score more. Let's say Oregon wins this one. In my opinion, Texas.
Yeah, that's what I said too.
So
I think that sets us up for a Texas BCU Boise State national championship.
So that would mean the 4 would play the 1, and so out of the brackets, the 1 seed, 4 seed, and then the 2 seed, 3 seed.
Oh wait, yeah, you're right. We have that flip flop.
So it would be Boise.
So it's
State.
the bottom versus the bottom.
It
top
would be
versus
Boise
the top.
Boise State versus Oregon, Ole Miss versus Texas. And I think
I
think right now, and I said this before, and I've said it for weeks. I think those are the 2 best teams in the country right now.
If it was right side versus left side, I would have said Boise State and Texas.
Okay.
But the fact that it's top versus bottom,
Yeah,
I think you're probably right.
These 2 versus, and the thing is if we see this, if we see Oregon,
If we see that, I think Texas wins.
yeah, if we see Oregon versus Texas, let it be known that the first ever 12-team playoff for Division I FBS would actually feature the 2 best teams in the country playing each other for a championship, which is what you want. So
Yeah.
We'll see. You know, who's going to step out and show themselves as the best teams in the country? We'll see. But going into this past weekend, Oregon and Texas, to me, were still the 2 best teams in the country.
Don't count Boise State out, folks.
I don't want to.
Just don't do it.
I don't want to.
Because I think it would be a difficult matchup for them against Oregon. But I'm going to tell you right now, if Ohio State wins the Big Ten, I think Boise State makes a run at the championship. Boise State got screwed out of it once before.
Same as UCF.
That Boise State championship team that went undefeated, that they allowed them to claim a national championship as well. I think that was 08, 09 maybe. I don't remember what year it was, but whatever it was, they got screwed out of it that year. I think they would have won the national championship had they got the chance. But they probably have that taste in there, that sour taste in their mouth. I'm sure they want to play a home game on the Smurf turf, but I think the only way they get a home game on the Smurf turf is if Miami wins the ACC and whoever wins the Big 12 just absolutely dominates. Then maybe you put them at like 8. But I wouldn't put Boise State at 12. Because they are not the 12th best team in the country. They are easily a top 6 team, I would say.
The best thing that can happen to the conferences that aren't called power is Boise State to get one of those top 4 seeds and have an automatic bye through the first round.
Yeah. I think that'd be fun. I'd be rooting, in that whole scenario, I'd be rooting for Penn State because they're my second team. But, if Penn State loses, then I'm going to be all for Boise State because the Gators are out. I don't want any of the SEC teams to win. I don't want any of the Big Ten teams to win other than Penn State. So I'd be all in for Boise State. Imagine if Boise State and SMU were to play for the national championship.
Yeah.
How awesome would that be?
Yeah.
It's probably never going to happen, but still. That would be awesome. SMU, a team that was in the American for years, goes to the ACC and makes a run to the national championship game. I think Boise State would win that game pretty handily, but that would be a fun national championship game.
Yeah, listen, this hopefully will allow for some real, genuine champions to be determined and not champions that are set up to succeed even when they fail. So we'll see what it looks like. What it does look like is that the road to the ACC getting 2 in is SMU Miami playing for the ACC championship and SMU winning. The SEC will have at least 3. The Big Ten will have at least 3. The Big 12 will probably have 1. The Mountain West will have Boise if all goes well for them. And Notre Dame will get in. So
I think the only way Tulane, and I'm going to say Tulane because I think they're going to beat Army for the American Championship. The only way they get in is if Boise State loses the Mountain West Championship. And even then, I don't think they're going to not. I think Boise State would make it as a not-large team in that scenario.
And then in that case, they'd be the 12. But
yeah,
we'll see where they put them. The unfortunate thing for the American Conference USA, the Sun Belt, the MAC, and I mean, I can't really say the Pac this year.
I feel bad for the MAC. I love some good MACtion, man.
Yeah. But I feel bad for these conferences. I don't think it's fair by any stretch of the imagination. I think of these 4 conferences this year, the American, once again, has the biggest gripe because Army and Tulane are both undefeated in the conference. Army was one of the last undefeated teams in the country, and Army and Tulane going up against each other for the championship. I think that champion should definitely, at worst, be a 12, but they're going to give a 4th to the SEC or the Big Ten, which, you know, again, if you wanted this to be the SEC Big Ten championship, call it that. But if it's going to be,
I don't think it will be, though.
If it's going to be the college football playoff, then this year the American should have somebody in. And I mean, I would love, in my world, I would love to see an SMU Army Boise State or an SMU Tulane Boise State. But SMU, unfortunately, has been given unfair treatment. They're going to have to win out. Boise's been considered a darling.
I still don't think so.
Narratives are narratives. So, hey.
I still don't think
I'll
SMU
argue
has to win
SMU
out.
in all day, but I'm telling you right now, look at where the committee has put them. The committee is trying to keep them out. The only way that they're going to let them in is if they win, because the committee has shown you by ranking that they don't respect SMU. So in order for SMU
Miami's
to get
all
in,
that
they
good
got to
anyway.
win.
So
they got to win.
I think they're gonna win.
They have to win to get in. But should they be in right now? Yes. Should they be in over Miami right now? Yes. Should they be in the top 10 right now? Yes. Are they? No. The committee tells you ahead of time, before the games are played, where they want teams to be. They tell you that. If you go and you pay attention, you really research the rankings, the committee shows you who they're arguing for and who they're arguing against and who they reluctantly have to put in. So SMU right now, they're not arguing for. They're arguing for Miami. So SMU has to do this. It's unfortunate. I don't agree with it. It is not my stance and it is not my opinion. But the way I feel is that the committee is like, okay, SMU, you win your last 2 games. You beat Cal. You beat whoever you play in the ACC championship. We'll put you in reluctantly. Miami is who they want in for whatever reason. And I think Boise State's in good footing. And unfortunately, I think Alabama's going to be out of this, but Texas, Georgia, if Texas and Georgia play for the SEC championship, whoever wins, they're both in. And then Ole Miss, I feel like everything that they've done and the games that they've played this year and who they've played and how they've played outside of that Florida game, I think Ole Miss gets enough of a case, and I think Tennessee's 2 losses gives them a case. And again, Ole Miss and Tennessee over Indiana. I like what Indiana's doing. Go back and look at how I've talked before. I think Indiana's been disrespected in the past. I like their old coach. So I'm happy for Indiana. But in this case, the SEC, I would rather see Ole Miss and Tennessee. And then Ohio State, we know is going to get in. We know Oregon's going to get in. We know Penn State's going to get in because the committee's already told you what they think of those 3 schools. And then, the Big 12, they're not given a lot of respect this year. And if BYU was still at the top.
If BYU would have stayed undefeated,
they would have been
BYU probably 100%.
If BYU would have stayed undefeated.
They were number 6
if BYU
before they lost.
If they were where they were and they won the Big 12 with no losses or 1 loss, BYU would have bounced the ACC champion out of the top 4.
Yes.
But they're not going to do
100%.
that because they need
BYU's
Arizona
not
State
even
and
going to
Iowa
play
State
for their
to
championship.
lose. Yeah, so BYU needs Iowa State and Arizona State to lose. Colorado needs a bunch of different things to happen. So the way it looks right now is Arizona State or Iowa State's got a really good shot. But if for some reason BYU gets to play in this thing, the door's open in the Big 12, but I think they only get one. That's what it looks like. Murph and I breaking it down. We didn't get to the NFL because we were breaking down the college football playoff. But really quick on the NFL, a lot of crazy things have happened, and it's been absolutely insane. Tennessee beat Houston, folks. Dallas beat Washington. Nothing makes sense right now, and hopefully we'll get to figure some of the stuff out.
Did you see, though, the play that Jaden Daniels made to score that touchdown at the end of the game?
You talking about Terry McLaurin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was that was a great throw. That was a perfect play call. You know, running all the way in for the touchdown, and then they missed the extra point.
Mm-hmm.
That is a brutal way to lose.
Yeah.
Brutal way to lose.
Absolutely doesn't make sense. But I will give some credit here in that rundown that some things have not made any sense. The Ravens will be at the Chargers. It's the Jim Harbaugh Bowl today, and so I hope you enjoy it. The Browns beat the Steelers. The Vikings barely beat the Bears. The Cowboys beat the Commanders, as I mentioned. The Chiefs barely beat the Panthers by a field goal. The Titans beat the Texans. It's been confusing, folks. Some other things made sense. And the Cardinals...
Saquon was ridiculous again last night.
Saquon played well. Josh Jacobs played his mind out. The Broncos continue to look really good under my dude Bobo Nix. And my predictions have come true so far for class. And Tommy DeVito starting at least one game for the Giants. I am 3 for 3 if everything holds, which Tommy...
He didn't look great in that game.
That's okay. My prediction was that he would start. So
yes, that is true.
Did
you see what Malik Neighbors said after that game?
I did not.
Malik Neighbors looks like he wants nothing to do with that team.
Probably not. He's a rookie. I mean, I said Marvin Harrison Jr. shouldn't go to Arizona because I feel like he would want out. And look at how Arizona's been all over the place this year. They're 6
and not throwing him the football.
They're 6-5, and he's had like 2 games where he's looked pretty good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it didn't work with DeAndre Hopkins and Kyler Murray. So,
if all I know is the Jets lost again. The bye week is undefeated this year.
Yeah, I will give a lot of credit to
the Jets managed to lose to the bye week.
Oh yeah, my Jaguars had a fantastic week at home, not having to play a game. So it's been great. And Washington, the Jets
had a terrible week. They fired Joe Douglas in the middle of the bye week.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on. Where's Daniel Jones going to end up, Greg? A backup somewhere. So, you know, he's
Minnesota.
He's going to be a backup somewhere. So
I think he goes to Minnesota because Darnold's banged up right now.
We'll see. But if I'm Minnesota, I would be like, yay.
Please let the Cowboys take him and let Daniel Jones just obliterate the Giants on Thanksgiving. That would be hysterical.
That would be fun. The Cowboys sign him for 1 week.
Yep.
1 week. Anyways,
and then cut him.
The best team in the state of Dallas right now, the SMU Mustangs, or in the city of Dallas, I should say, the SMU Mustangs. So shout out to SMU holding true. The state of Texas is not all the Longhorns. The Mustangs are doing it as well. Murph, as always, I appreciate the time. I appreciate y'all for watching, listening around the country and the world. We gave you bonus time and a lot of conversation about exactly every crazy thing that's going on. So Greg thinks that he's going to go to the Niner gang. Who knows, Greg?
That's another one I've heard. That one makes sense. That would make sense.
Brandon Allen's not bad. I mean, he was in Jacksonville. He's not a bad quarterback, but
no,
we'll see.
I think Daniel Jones is better than he is, but if you put Daniel Jones in a good system with weapons, he could be a serviceable quarterback. I mean, he's going to start for somebody next year. I just don't know who.
If I'm Daniel Jones, I'll go to the NFC West right now. It's wide open.
Yeah.
Every team in there is not great. Your best team is 6-5.
But the problem is, who needs a quarterback other than the Niners? And the Niners really don't need a quarterback. Purdy's just out for a week or two.
Right.
Well, I mean, it depends on how the MRI comes back on his shoulder.
We'll see. Daniel Jones, hopefully everything works out for him. Praying for the best for you. A lot of high hopes. Got to talk to him in college. So I know Giants fans aren't fond, but I'm always hoping the best for everybody out there, including the Big Ten. Go and win your games, folks. It's a wonderful final week of the regular season. for college football, and the first time in 22 years to the date and to the day of the week that Miami returns to the Dome. The last time they did it, both teams were in the Big East. Saturday, November 30th, 2002. And Syracuse, 22 years later, will host Miami in their first ACC game against Miami in Syracuse, even though they've been in the conference for over a decade. And I hope that every single one of you packs those seats. There is no reason on November 30th to not see Miami play Syracuse in the Dome for the first time in 22 years.
And watch Syracuse beat Miami in the Dome and knock them out of the playoff.
I don't want to see an empty seat in the Dome. By the way, Isaac and I predicted that Syracuse would have at least 8 wins this season with a chance at 9 or 10. We got 8 right, and they got a chance for 9 this week, and we'll see where we go from here. Murph, thank you for your time. Happy Turkey Day, and I'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. We'll see you next week.
So that coming here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. We'll take our final fast break. Your boys got to get ready to go to that Fran Brown press conference. So we'll be back right after this. Avicoli's, located on the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road in Liverpool, New York, has been your trusted neighbor for decades. Located just steps from Liverpool High School, we're happy to have the Liverpool Warriors on-site, on-location broadcast at Avicoli's through Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora every single month, featuring student athletes, coaches, and administration throughout the year from Liverpool High School. Head out to Avicoli's today on the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road in Liverpool, New York, open Tuesday through Sunday for lunch, dinner, and drinks. We'd love to see you out there, and of course you can call them at 315-622-5100 for takeout, delivery, and catering. That's 315-622-5100, and also find them on myavicolis.com. That's myavicollis.com. Having peace of mind when you're out of town that your furry-loving friend is safe and sound means taking them to Canine Campground, because we all know that when it comes to the love of our pets, it goes well beyond the call of duty to make sure they're safe and sound. Right, Lily? So take a ride to 242 Johnson Street in East Syracuse, New York, and see Canine Campground and where your dog will be staying, in the classic cabin, the executive cabin, the grand cabin, or of course the luxury cabin, because if you know Lily, you know she loves luxury. Now you don't have to wait to the last minute to find a family member or a friend that'll take your dog for a few days. Call Canine Campground at 315-299-4013. That's 315-299-4013. Their drop-off and pickup times are Monday through Sunday. Check K9campground.com for more information. That's the letter K, the number 9, and campground spelled with a K.com. K9campground.com.
When you're going out of town, bring your dog to Canine Campground.
Carvel DeWitt, it's what happy tastes like. Do you know why? Because we make ice cream. Creamy, rich, flavorful ice cream. Not yogurt or iced milk like some of our competitors. Ice cream. Fresh, by hand, daily. For the calorie conscious, we have something new for you. Our new Carvelite. Same great flavor, creaminess, and texture of our regular ice cream with only 35 calories an ounce. So whether you want an ice cream cake, flying saucer, dasher, Carvelanche, hard or soft ice cream, we will satisfy your craving with our fresh, handmade regular or new Carvelite ice cream. Carvel DeWitt. It's what happy tastes like.
The Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus, New York is located on 3680 Milton Avenue in the Home Depot Plaza. It is your family-friendly sports bar and restaurant. Folks, some sports bars aren't family-friendly. Some family-friendly restaurants are not sports bars. The Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus, New York is proud to be both. It is that marriage that you've been looking for years. The Wildcat Sports Pub is your home base for your sports bar and restaurant needs, games for the kids, indoor and outdoor activities, and enough things on the menu to come back every single week and get to try something new. They're open Sundays from noon to 8 p.m., Monday through Wednesday, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., and Thursday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to midnight. For reservations and party information, call 315 487-2222 for the Wildcat family-friendly sports pub and restaurant.
GG Cards and Breaks. Like, comment, subscribe.
GG Cards and Breaks coming to you at 639 Delmar Place in Syracuse, New York is your one-stop sports card and trading card shop. Head over there every Tuesday through Saturday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and on Sundays from 10 to 5 weekly. We look forward to seeing you over there for hockey, basketball, baseball, football, soccer, as well as Disney Lorcana, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pokemon, and Magic the Gathering, and more, while supplies last all over there. And they have all of your supplies, speaking of supplies, have everything you need to protect your cards and to bring them to and fro. So make sure you head over there and get yourself some GG Cards and Breaks, awesome packs, boxes, and more. You never know what you're going to find at GG Cards and Breaks from day to day. And I want to thank Josh Anthony and the entire team for the incredible work that they do on 639 Delmar Place in Syracuse, New York, Tuesday through Saturday from 10 to 6 and on Sundays from 10 to 5. With that being said, thanks for watching and listening on YouTube.com and Facebook.com, both /WakeUpCallDT, as well as on WakeUpCallDT.podbean.com. And of course, many thanks to Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts, Player FM, Podbean, Podchaser.com, Podvine, Spotify, TuneIn, and YouTube, as well as others, for giving us the opportunity to reach out to you on your favorite podcasting platform. Search Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, or one word, Wake Up Call DT, on any one of these, and make sure to follow and subscribe. Big time thanks to the Brooklyn Pickle that we proudly are partnered with down in North Carolina on 1788 Old Morganton Road in Southern Pines, North Carolina. So much appreciation to the wonderful Brooklyn Pickle in Southern Pines, North Carolina, which is right by Pinehurst Golf Courses. And of course, many thanks to our wonderful team here in Central and Upstate New York. Carvel DeWitt, the Wildcat Sports Pub, Servomation, Mother's Cupboard, Canine Camp Dog Daycare, Avicoli's, GG Cards and Breaks, Ma and Pa's, the snack capital of the world, Pizza Man, as well as Canine Campground Dog Boarding, Fire Pit Barbecue and Saloon, Chick-fil-A Cicero, Great Lakes Honda City, Bryan's Landing, and we are the exclusive multimedia marketing partner of your Lemoyne College Dolphins, Bryan and Stratton College of Syracuse Bobcats, and Binghamton University Bearcats. Find your Dolphins every single Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time during Dolphin Time. Student athletes, coaches, and administration, as well as future Dolphins and alumni joining the broadcast over the years. Of course, you'll find our Bobcat Buzz with the Bryan and Stratton College Bobcats of Syracuse every month, and you'll find the Binghamton University Bearcats every single Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time with student athletes, coaches, and administration. For more, you can go to youtube.com/WakeUpCallDT, find our entire library under the Lemoyne playlist, our Bobcats under the BSC Syracuse playlist, and our Bearcats under the Binghamton playlist. They're all on WakeUpCallDT.com as well. And you can find more information on the Dolphins by going to LeMoyneDolphins.com. For the Bobcats by going to Syracuse.bscbobcats.com. And for the Bearcats by going to BinghamtonBearcats.com. Thank you to Brendan Murphy for joining the show today. Thank you to you all for watching and listening here on Thanksgiving week. As I said before, we will be off Thursday and Friday in celebration of the holiday. Next week, we have an entire awesome lineup of specials coming to you, and we got a couple more days to cram everything in. You're not going to miss anything on this week's show. Papa Joe's going to join us a day early on Wednesday. We're going to get the annoying moment in, ingredients to success, lead, top dog of the week, fantasy football. So you're not going to miss anything this week, even though we're going to be off for Thanksgiving. I look forward to talking with you soon. My shout out to everybody going out there and proving their way. And as I always say here on the show, as an impartial broadcaster, whatever team, whatever conference, whatever sport, I just want fairness. And that's what you hope for. So the college football playoff was meant to expand and create more fairness. And I still think the Big Ten is getting an unfair advantage, and Notre Dame is as well. And I would just like to see fair be fair. I also started the show off by saying that Notre Dame beat Army. So I have nothing to say about that except for congratulations to Notre Dame. A lot of positivity on their side, feather in their cap, and much respect for that win. So Notre Dame winning that game this season, I think that's a quality win. I think their wins over Texas A&M and Army are their best, and I want to give them credit for that. So I do want to give them a big-time shout-out for that. Big-time shout-out to the Fighting Irish. And for the Big Ten, shout-out to Dylan Gabriel, who I've covered since he was at UCF. Well, followed him since back then, I should say. And then for the rest of everything to shake out, we'll see how it happens. It's unfortunate that some conferences and some teams are not given the narrative at the beginning of the season, so they're always fighting the narrative. And other teams and conferences are given the narrative, and even when they lose, the narrative still persists. What we know is when narratives are created, if people hold on to them, then they stand to stick throughout the year. If people hold on to narrative, remember, power is not anything other than a media term. That's all power is, but that's what we talk about now. Who's a power, who's not a power. It was a media-created term. That's all it was that created a divide. So remember, it was an idea that has now become a narrative. And some of these teams have done the work. Some of these teams got the advantage. And Oregon has done an incredible job in the Big Ten. And I haven't said a bad word about Oregon all season. Ohio State, beating Penn State and beating Indiana, that says something to me. I don't think they're the second best team in the country, but I give them respect for those wins. Penn State, I think they're having a better season than recent years, but the jury's still out on who have they actually beaten. Indiana, I'm extremely happy for. I just don't know if the schedule they've had is better than seeing an SEC team with 2 or 3 losses. So that's what it comes down to. It's all impartial. I'm trying to be fair and present factual evidence. I have nothing against any conference or any team. I want to see everybody win. And I just want it to be fair. And unfortunately, 4 conferences are going to be watching no matter what they do this year. And that's sad. But respect is where respect. I give respect where it's earned. And Notre Dame, a lot of respect for the way you played Army. Fantastic game to the Fighting Irish. God bless you all. No stress. Do your best. We'll talk tomorrow, God willing. And until then, have a wonderful, beautiful day. Find us on social media. Stay safe and be good to each other.